OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
Yeah, you're very welcome along. Oh, was that the sound of your water, or is that a sound effect on the end of it? Colin there, desperately getting some fluids into him.
Coffee. As Ronan O'Gara said, 2006, Leicester Tigers post-match interview. First question from the interviewer. Ronan, congratulations, huge win for Munster. Is that tea or coffee? He said, coffee. It was his last-minute penalties, remember that?
Yes, of
course. The wind and rain, one of his finest moments of many.
So that's the secret.
Yeah.
There you go, good start to the show. Shane, how are you?
Good morning, lads. How are
Colin,
things?
how are you?
I'm good, yeah.
Shane's just back from Villa Park. Took him this long to get back. It's a far distant outpost.
It is. It is.
Birmingham's a bit of a shithole, isn't it?
Do you know what?
Jesus, no need for that. We have a big Birmingham following.
Like I'd been.
I love Aston Villa, but the city needs to
Birmingham.
City needs a bit of help.
Yeah, maybe part of it was Sunday because we went into Birmingham near New Street to kind of get the couple of pints in after the match, and
is that the Bull Ring?
It's close there, and it's it's a bit it is a bit of a shithole. It's not the nicest.
It's like Dublin in the 80s. It's just no one ever came along and gave it a lick of paint.
No, I was thinking is that Sunday evening not much happens in the cities in the UK. I guess it's a bit quieter than Dublin, say for example, on a Sunday night. But it was fairly grim. We went to the Witten Arms in Aston, very close walking distance of the stadium, which was, judging by research, an away pub. But then it was kind of split into two. The away fans, the United fans at the back, heavily searched in terms of bags and body checks and all the rest that you'd expect on an away day. But really good experience, I have to say. I really liked Villa Park. The result wasn't good from a United perspective, but Villa were brilliant.
Villa were good.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere was incredible, which you'd expect, I guess, for a new manager in his first game in charge. But it was just one of those games where you're like, better team won, 3-1, fair enough. Even Tyrone Mings played brilliantly well. So you're like, this is... There
was one clearance where Tyrone sliced it into the air and you're like, this is one of those highlight reels where a goal comes.
That tussle with Ronaldo was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He didn't back down at all.
No.
He doesn't see that, people doing that to Ronaldo.
No.
You can't. You do now. You see it all the time.
You don't see people tussling with him
at
like
the moment, you see it all the time. Everybody's trying to make their bones by going, I'm going to have something on my social of me and Ronaldo.
Showing off.
Is that what Tyrone was thinking at that moment?
Everybody's
headlock on my
Instagram following.
Engagement is going to be through the roof.
Yeah, lads, I have to say, Villa Park is... I warmed to it.
A cathedral.
A cathedral, of course. We were trying to get the poppy sold to us outside the stadium and all the rest, and went into the pubs afterwards and played pool in probably the worst singular pub I've ever set foot in my life. It was all the locals, the Villa fans after the match, kind of reflecting and trying to play pool, and the pool table was one of those where balls were rolling down towards the one end. We were like, what are we doing in here? But I like those pubs with a bit of character.
Until everything,
plenty of them.
Until everything kicks off, and then it's like, it's all fun and games until somebody lost an eye, literally.
Well, true, that is true. But no, like an experience, and it's certainly a stadium I go back to, I think. But yeah, I think a day trip is the best way to do it.
That pub I'm picturing is seen from Train Spotting 2.
It was a bit, even when we were in the pub beforehand, the Witten Arms at the back, it was all a bit Green Street. Away fans don't tend to wear I probably saw 3 United jerseys across the entire day.
This is what I know about Villa Park, right, from what I've heard. Paul Scholes said it was a massive pitch. It's great to play on.
Huge, yeah.
Loved it. And the second is that their fans are very moody and can turn on a whim.
That's just the cadence of the accent. It sounds moody.
So
it was... The chance, they got the chance going. See, I didn't get to see that side because they scored so early and then went 2-0 ahead so early. You're like, they're just in a good mood for the entire game. When Luke Shaw scored the deflected goal, they weren't even worried because it was 4 half time, came back out, got the 2-goal cushion extended. So, I don't know. Emi Martinez had a few chances. He's a popular guy over there.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant save from a Ronaldo header.
Yeah. He's quality. Jacob Ramsey went
straight in as captain as well. New manager names the guy who should be captain.
Yeah.
Everything's in place. McGinn comes off the bench, plays really well.
And even Ings wins a corner towards the end over the corner where we were kind of close stand. Just the reaction from the crowd for every little moment. And then they were cheering every pass at the end of the game, and you're thinking, this is rubbing salt in the wounds for United here.
Yeah, it's 27 years since I've seen that.
Yeah, was it 95 the last time?
That's a very, 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 very long time against any team in football. And it's like, it's only Man United.
It was 2-2 last season, I think, under Gerrard. They very nearly did it.
Nearly.
The Emery effect. So your brother anyway was struggling for a ticket?
Oh, lads. So I was presenting here on Saturday, and we had
Pretty shameless. I'm on my holidays getting texts from Shane going, here, listen, get me a ticket.
Well,
to be fair, I said, who had text? Yeah, I think it was a you column that said text Ger there.
I said, he's online, don't worry, he's online.
Yeah. So I was texting every Villa fan I know, just saying, do you have any contacts?
You texted Paul McGrath. That is
Shout out to show fan Roy Larmer.
Yeah,
Why didn't he text Paul McGrath?
And
don't be texting Paul McGrath asking for tickets. So sometimes you just need an adult in the room. Don't be texting Paul McGrath for tickets.
I was actually, but it was on the
Irish football legend. First time you've heard from him in I don't know, ever maybe. And it's
but it's not like Paul. It's like Paul, no comment, you've tickets.
That wasn't the premise.
It's a bit of a conversation,
that wasn't the premise.
Sleazy. That's.
No, hold on. This needs context.
Was this his idea as well?
No. This needs context.
Whose idea was this?
It was.
Whoa! Don't be pointing at me. I helped you out.
That is despicable.
I helped you out.
Don't text people you don't know.
This needs
asking
context.
for tickets.
That's my job.
It's a rule.
The first half of that sentence is my job. I text people I don't know all the time
to come on the show to speak to us.
This needs context. Yeah. So I texted Paul McGrath, and what I said was, Paul, heading over to Aston Villa United tomorrow.
Hello,
I'm a journalist.
how are you?
How are you keeping? Hope you're keeping well. All of that.
Shivering in the text.
This is an unknown number. I accept that.
I said if you, it was actually on a Twitter DM. It was a Twitter DM.
Oh, okay, that's less.
Well, that's good. He knows your information. It's right there. Blue tick.
I said, look, do you?
Blue tick.
I have blue tick, yeah, of course, yeah.
$8 a month.
$8 a month. I actually said to him, look, if you wouldn't mind sitting down, if you'd be over at the Villa game and you'd be around to sit down for an interview for 10 minutes after the match, great. By the way, if you had any tickets,
that's the charm. That's the hand and charm coming through.
Yeah, no, but we got sorted eventually by the goodwill and good nature of David Myler, sending out a few texts to his contacts. So shout out to David Myler for helping us out.
No. You started the story, now you have to finish it. What happened?
What kind of a headline is that?
Don't bury it. One last thing. You're on the radio, on national radio, with 150,000 people listening.
Shameless, yeah. I hold my hands up.
This is also not good. So you're the worst.
You desperate habit.
That's very Nathan Murphy.
You've desperate habit of pointing. That's awful.
Well, I'm pointing. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
You shouldn't be pointing.
The people
way beyond that.
The people watching don't know that I'm pointing directly at Colm because off screen.
Ordinarily, I wouldn't do it, but I see my brother booked his flights over. He was coming over. I felt sorry. It was my younger brother. You got to look after your own, you know. So I felt sorry for him flying over, and I'd be going into the press box, and he'd be sitting there in the pub, in the most depressing pub in England, watching the game by himself on a tiny little television that was from the feckin' 60s. So I felt sorry for him.
Poor Birmingham and all this.
I know. So put the contacts out there. Myler said on air on the weekend that I'm going to text your captain. So he puts a text in with a former teammate of his, Harry Maguire.
Right, Harry Maguire.
Of course, he played alongside at Hull City, and lo and behold, we walk up to the ticket office. 12:30, an hour and a half before throw-ins as I kick off at Villa Park, and big brown envelope, the name Harry Maguire written on the outside, and for Harry Maguire.
It's unbelievable.
Harry Maguire for Shane Hannon. Open the envelope.
It did say for Shane Hannon.
It did.
Oh wow, okay.
So we had a ticket.
Because I was thinking your brother walks up and goes Harry Maguire, and they're like, you're not Harry Maguire. You don't even sound like him.
I actually walked up to the desk and said, ticket for Shane Hannon from Harry Maguire, and I felt like an idiot. I did feel like an idiot, but they were like, oh yeah, that's here, yeah, no problem.
Wow, there you go.
So shout out Harry Maguire and David Myler.
Harry Maguire for the England team, straight back in.
Harry Maguire, I love him.
Well, he should have started. Might have been a different result.
Should have started. And I saw him warming up.
Starting new tickets.
He was warming up close to us in the second half, and I was thinking, what a man. Fair play. So it changed my attitude.
You stood up in the press box and went, love you, Harry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shamed myself. But right. Look, it was a great an experience. I'm glad the brother got in, and probably shamelessly used contacts to get the ticket in the end.
I'm glad Harry Maguire got some positive coverage for once.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lovely thing to do.
He deserves it, and he was brilliant against West Ham the previous week for the last half hour. So
I can see a bit of a redemption arc in his story.
It's all coming up, Harry.
Well, because he's not the focal point anymore. Because when he plays, it's kind of noteworthy, and then he's no pressure to stay in the team because the star-team partnership does not involve him anymore.
Well, he could have a huge World Cup.
If England he'll definitely play at the World Cup. Yeah, fair play to Harry. Shout out to Harry.
Shout out to Harry and shout out to David Myler for helping us out. So,
well,
shameless.
Jesper Blomqvist, John Sieverbeck, Peter Schmeichel, your boys took one hell of a beating at the weekend. Schmeichel technically, I suppose, ended up as one of the Villa boys for a little while.
But we landed over as well. We were quite early to the stadium because the flight was fairly early over. Shout out to Owen Sheehan as well for getting me the flight. That was the bonus rider.
I forgot about this, yeah.
So he actually, Owen Sheehan essentially paid for my flight without realising it. But as soon as you landed at Villa Park, the big, massive kind of images of Paul McGrath and Alan McLaughlin and all these guys. Like, there's a massive Irish. You forget the Irish influence on the club. Well, you don't forget the Paul McGrath influence, I guess. But
it's not Alan McLaughlin.
Sorry, not Alan McLaughlin.
Andy Townsend.
There was Townsend. David O'Leary as well, and Ray Houghton, and sure, all these. Like, there's.
Did they have David O'Leary up?
He's a former manager.
No, I'm just thinking of the Irish people that have had a role in the club. Like, obviously
I don't think they remember David O'Leary too fondly.
Not quite as fondly.
Bleak period in terms of the football, quality football, bad transfer.
And he gave this to Doug Ellis afterwards. That's my memory of
terrible Villa manager, but yeah.
The Doug Ellis stand, that's where the away fans are put into Villa Park as well. So
it's interesting, isn't it, that they put the away fans in the...
I know, throw them in there. But yeah, quality stadium, quality atmosphere, highly recommend.
Alright, OTB AM brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember, effortless shave, magnificent mow. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. Rhys McClenaghan is going to join us, fresh from his World Championship gold medal at 7:50. Graham Hunt is going to talk to us about Piqué and the Champions League draw, and it turns out the Europa League draw. Sports pages at 8:30. Eric Donovan is going to join us in studio. He has officially announced his retirement at 8:40. Paudie Maher has got a new book out, and we're going to talk to him about that book at 9:10, and then we'll play you some highlights from Monday Night Rugby. Right, I do want to talk a little bit about Martin O'Neill, who's got his own book out, back page of the Irish Independent. Stephen Beacom has done an interview with him. I was treated as an outsider as Ireland boss, a figure you hate, says O'Neill. The quotes here are: the Denmark result became a point for the Republic media to throw everything at you in terms of criticism. It was kind of storing up a little bit. The truth is, there were a number of times that I was called the Northerner or the outsider, and I was treated in many ways the same way as Trapattoni eventually became one of those figures you tend to hate. I think that was it. My persona didn't seem to fit with them throughout the time, and I'm even going back to heavy criticism in the early stages of our 2016 European campaign when we were in the same group as Germany, Poland, Scotland and Georgia. So, it's interesting because I think there's a germ of truth in this.
I think there's more of a germ of truth in that maybe his persona didn't stick with certain people, but I don't know if his being from the north. I mean, James McLean's from the north, Shane Duffy's technically from the north. These guys are, in a similar position to Martin O'Neill, and I don't think anyone refers to them or treats them differently because of their... Well, I'm sure they are in some quarters, but certainly not amongst the fans. And I don't think any of the fans treated O'Neill differently because he was from the north, did they? That's not a thing. That wasn't a thing at the time, and I don't think it's a thing now.
He's talking about the media.
Sorry, right, but
he's talking about generally this perception. I think that just because they're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Eyebrows were raised when he was appointed, wasn't it? Former Northern Irish international Republic of Ireland manager. It's like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but it was nothing more than that at the time.
Yeah, but
media coverage. I think it was seen as a positive appointment.
Yeah,
probably overshadowed by his assistant also.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, you obviously remember it differently.
I just think that there is a generally acceptable level of anti-northern stuff in general conversation, and it's like mostly fine. Sometimes it flares up. I don't think that. I think that all the conversations around the United Ireland are going to be very interesting, because you're going to see a lot of people who don't want it in the south.
Yeah.
Who have been like, yeah, it'll be grand. But then they'll be like, now when it comes to voting for it, there's going to be like a surprising group of people who vote against it without ever telling you that they're going to vote against it.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Like Brexit.
I think, that's what I think. Now, I think at the start of that campaign, the football was grim. That away Scotland performance, we played terribly. I think the Denmark game, he took off all his central midfielders and they poured through the central midfield area. And did Nicholas Bentner score the fifth?
Yeah, he did. So
there's a lot, we had to leave early to get post-match fan reaction, so we left when it was 4-1 and I missed Bentner. Did he drop his pants?
No,
was it a penalty?
Those days were gone. Penalty, yeah. Right
so
in front of the Danish fans.
We can hear that, and we spoke to the Danish fans afterwards. But so the team deserved the criticism that they were getting at that stage. If he had left at the end of the Euros, he'd go down as a brilliant Ireland manager who got us out of a group at a tournament. Even when you say that, right, everyone's like, oh, we only beat Italy though. It's like, I mean, come on. He got like brilliant performances from Jeff Hendrick.
Yeah.
And who else was in that midfield?
Houlihan and
he did have to
Yeah,
press gang
Wormley.
into playing Wes.
yeah.
I don't know. I thought like that tournament, we got out of the tournament, we were 1-0 up against France, we had a man sent off. France are at home.
Yeah.
I like his track record on balance is excellent, but everybody still is like, no.
I think that's because he lets off a certain attitude in interviews.
What attitude?
There just seems to be an air of what's the word to describe it? He's quite sarcastic sometimes in interviews, I find.
Very sarcastic, yeah.
But that's just him, and I think maybe that's why some certain members of the media maybe didn't like his attitude and maybe wrote negative articles about him because of the way they were treated in press conferences, potentially.
He didn't like a certain member of the media as well, like, and it became painful viewing post-match.
Yeah.
Like, you were saying, if O'Neill left after Euro 2016, he would have gone down well as Irish manager. If O'Neill stopped managing at around 2010, he would have been seen as an absolutely phenomenal football person in general, both as a player and the manager, because the things he did at Leicester, Celtic, and then initially at your own club, when they played so well, they got into Europe, and that kind of distracted him, and the form dipped after that. When he was named Ireland manager, I think it was largely met with positive reaction.
I was delighted. I thought this is like a perfect thing, and I actually
How quickly
think that
it changes.
I mean, I still think it was the right decision. I still think that on balance, the whole experience was largely a positive one, where we go to a tournament, we play good football when we get there, apart from the Belgium game. We get out of a group. It's a massive recovery from the Trapattoni era, where we got absolutely annihilated and hammered, and we're told you're no good, don't even try anything. At the Euros, 4 years later, we're getting out of the group. Like I think that's his legacy. The Denmark game, unfortunately, is also a part of the legacy, and we did get completely annihilated in that game because they weren't thinking straight. Something happened. They had this massive brain fart, and they weren't thinking. Like, the build-up to that game was so exciting. Mm-hmm. Like, the first 10 minutes of that game were so exciting, and then Christian Eriksen played the greatest game of his life.
He had moments of extremes, you know, because it was the Germany game 2015, Shane Long, and then the Euros as well, and he provided what Stephen Kenny hasn't so far, which is that reading in the ears amazing moment, whereas Kenny's gradually improving the football, but the results aren't following. O'Neill was not quite the total opposite, but he did provide those seminal moments. And like, one thing with O'Neill's tenure as Ireland manager is it won't be forgotten, because there's a lot of talking points from it. So he made an impact initially quite positively, and then it completely turned. But it's amazing to see that for a guy who managed for nearly 2 decades and largely had an extremely successful managerial career, really what's remembered is the latter portion of it, and how and certainly how he came across in the media, which did not help. Like, it's all about perception.
Yes.
If he came across quite like, he's a charismatic guy, but he let the other side of his personality get through, and then he became a bit of a dislikable figure, which is unfortunate considering what he achieved in the game.
I like Martin, but he's obviously feeling a little bit sour as to how it ended with Ireland, with himself and Keane, and the,
to say the least,
perceived image that is there. And look, he's trying to sell a book, and he's got issues that he wants to.
I think he's
vent.
telling his truth, right?
Yeah,
and
of course.
I think that this is so. The pantomime after the post match with Tony O'Donoghue, we're all talking about, right?
Yeah.
Those post match interviews, like, is that more important than the quality of the football? It isn't really. Like, you were talking about perception is reality, grand, but like, surely people can get over. There's some kind of clash here. There's something going on. I don't know what it was. I can't actually remember what the trigger for it was. He has a very thin skin. Does not take criticism very well. Has remembered a lot of the criticism. I do think some of it was motivated by the fact that here's a northerner coming down. I do genuinely think that an element of that was the football was no good in portions, but then when the football was good, there was still a kind of sneaking kind of, he doesn't deserve any credit for this. Like, well, all right, okay, fair enough. But then Mick McCarthy comes in, and we're like scraping against Gibraltar, and we're scraping against Georgia, and like, what did he do in the second period? In his first period, he had Roy Keane, Robbie Keane, Damien Duff. So what did Trapattoni make us watch? It was really abysmal, apart from, in fairness, the qualifying campaign for the World Cup, when Thierry Henry handballed. There was some good performances.
That performance was excellent, yeah.
That performance,
but overall,
the performance against the two Italy performances were decent.
I never thought about that northern element, but only if he thinks that, then it's true, because it's that's his own experience. But like, Mark C there in the YouTube comments, I think nails it. Generally, was like never liked O'Neill, but it had nothing to do where he came from.
True,
and I feel that
never liked him.
for those who disliked him,
even at the start.
Now I think it was just right at the end. He became a bit he became unpalatable at the end.
Yeah,
that was really what happened.
All sporting careers end in failure, but
it was a bit of a politician's career. Yeah,
gets no credit for getting out of a group.
True, but I have to say, I'll read the book because even in champion football, there's a lot of stories that I'm like, I hope he brings these things.
Well, I'll read the book because of his Forest days and Celtic and Leicester, because the extract about the Clough story is fascinating. Brian Clough, when he throws the medal,
he wrote it himself, which is pretty interesting. Not a million people do that. I know Paul Gavin did. It was really good. So I'm looking forward to this. I hope it's really good as well. 7:50 this morning. OTB AM brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. Right now, we're joined on the line by Ireland's first ever gymnastics world champion, Rhys McClenaghan. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well. It's good to hear you say that.
Where's the gold medal?
Right here, sitting beside me.
All right.
Nice.
Have you been just wearing it around the house, looking at yourself in the mirror?
It's just been sitting on my bedside table just to remind myself when I wake up every morning that it's actually real.
When does it sink in, or has it yet?
I don't think it's quite sunk in yet, to be honest. I don't know when it will. Maybe it never will. Who knows? But I'm just so happy that it's done. It's like a huge relief that, first of all, that I was able to perform on that big stage, but then also just to finally, have that world title that I've dreamed about for so long. It feels like that's such a huge thing ticked off on my list.
We're on the outside and we're complete amateurs when it comes to this, but it feels like the thing that separates everybody at the end of these big tournaments that you're at isn't really technical ability. It seems like you're all very, very talented. You've all done a gazillion hours. You all know exactly what you're trying to do. It's that bit that you talked about there, delivering on the big stage, that separates the medalists each time that it happens. Is that where the relief comes from, that you finally did justice to all that hard work and those years of graft?
Yeah, very much so. All of that physical preparation is done in the months before the competition. So when you hit competition time, your arms shouldn't really be that fatigued at all. So it's not like, you're pushing through your marathon or you're pushing your body to the limits during the competition. You're actually just zoning in on your skills. And when you do that around a skill-based sport and nerves have a part to play, then they're going to affect those skills that you've actually got. So especially for an apparatus like the pommel horse, you'll see people falling all the time. It's very rare to get a pommel horse final. If there has ever been a pommel horse final with no falls in it, I'd love somebody to send it to me because it's just one of those apparatus, and luckily I was able to hold my own nerves there.
And why this time? What's different about what just happened this weekend that enabled you to reach that level of excellence and keep the nerves at bay, or feel the nerves and work with them?
So, I feel like I am able to do that, and I've always been able to do that, and that's due to kind of the mindset training that goes into my everyday practice. My coach and I do these practice competitions where we create high pressure situations. Sometimes Luke even gets a bunch of school kids in to watch my practice competitions just to add that bit of pressure. So it's something we do train for, and so this is my 5th World Championship, so it certainly doesn't come easy. But there's so many contributors to not having got that gold medal in the past. But, it's just a relief to have it done now.
Rhys, am I right in saying that you mentioned your coach there, Luke Carson, and I know you've been working together for a long time, 8 years or so. You changed up your pommel horse routine at some point in the build-up. So, how crucial was that in terms of getting over the line and getting this gold medal?
Yeah, it's hugely crucial. It's just a perfect example of things not going well and learning from them, making a decision and making a call to change the routine for the better. And it was a tactic and a new skill that we put into the routine coming into this year to try and improve our execution score mostly. But that routine just didn't compete well. It's a strange skill, and I stayed on the pommel horse throughout all the competitions, but I just split my legs, and that was enough for the judges just to absolutely annihilate me on that execution score and take points off me. So we thought, that's what happened at the Commonwealth Games, where I got silver, even with that mistake, and then at the European Championships, I just missed out on that final because of an error. So we went back to the training hall, we reassessed, and we thought of a routine that could take home this gold medal, and it worked out.
That must be even more fulfilling in a way, that it's not just the physical thing that you've had to work out, it's the strategic element that you've delivered on as well.
Yeah, certainly. That's the beauty of gymnastics as well. It's finding individual skills that suits every gymnast individually. So the routine is comprised of 10 skills. So it's about selecting those skills very carefully, having a nice balance of difficulty, but then also executing them very well. And my routine now is full of those difficult skills, but also the very nice execution of them.
What difference does it make, having had the setbacks that you've had over the last 18 months? Like, how beneficial in the long run has that been to you? I know at the time they obviously don't feel like, oh great, yay, another day of learning, where I'm really disappointed.
Yeah, they certainly don't. It feels like you're knocked down and then somebody's stomping on your head while you're down on the ground. If you lose competition after competition or have failure after failure, but because of that, it makes these successes so much sweeter. And I feel like that's why in my post competition interview, all I did was cry. I did not get one word out in that interview. I just cried because there was so much relief. And I know how hard it was to go back into that gym after those failures and be composed about it, learn from the mistakes, and inevitably put on a performance like I did in Liverpool.
Because you can't have been composed when everything you've been working for a number of years and it does fall apart like that. You can't have been composed. You must have been in turmoil.
Yeah, I was composed for the most part, I must say, but obviously you train for hours on end and put in every day of my life is dedicated to gymnastics, and then when your one moment doesn't go to plan, of course that's going to have a negative effect on your mentality, but it's just, you don't want it to overtake your mindset. You don't want it to be a mindset that sticks. You can be disappointed. I let myself be disappointed because I know that I flipped that disappointment into motivation, because I never want to feel that feeling again. So, for example, after the Olympics, I was like, yeah, damn right, I'm disappointed, but I'm going to turn this into motivation. And I did exactly that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm on top of the world right now.
How much would you say, Rhys, your discipline is physical versus mental? Because that's something that struck me after your, in your interview. I was thinking that's such a normal reaction and emotion to becoming a world champion, not being able to speak and being so emotional. Like, you're clearly in the physical shape to win a gold medal, but how much of it is on the mental side?
I would say that gymnastics, for me anyway, is 80% mental and 20% physical.
Right.
That's just a rough estimation that I've always had in my head. And yes, of course, you have to put in that physical grind. You got to go into the gym every day. You got to do that. But even to get there into the gym, to put in the effort, it's all up here. It's all in your minds, and that's where I feel like I thrive in this sport. When the shoulder gives up on me and I have to get surgery and push through rehab, or I have multiple wrist fractures, it's something you have to always push past mentally before you can get your body back to physical shape.
It strikes me, I saw Max Whitlock, the Team GB athlete, congratulating you and some lovely words he said about you afterwards, and he's got the three medals at world level. He's the Olympic champion. People are talking about this rivalry kind of building up. I know you probably have a few years on him, which is an advantage to yourself, but is that something that you kind of look for in gymnastics? It's an individual sport, and yet to have these kind of rivalries and people that you look at to kind of target must be a positive thing.
Yeah, I think it is a positive thing, and I welcome it, to be honest. And I don't think it's done enough in gymnastics. You see the boxers, you see the MMA fighters. It's always those toe-to-toe press conferences, and that's what builds up the hype to the fight. And I want that to be the case in gymnastics too. I said after the first time I beat Max, the current Olympic champion, when I was 18, I said, I'm coming for that world title next, Max, in my post-competition Instagram post. And I feel like that was the initiation of the rivalry, and it's something that does motivate me in training as well. And when I'm sitting on my bum in training, I think, oh, what's Max doing, or what's that Chinese guy doing in training that gets me off my bum and makes me work harder than ever.
that's what I want to see in Paris now. A face-off, a weigh in and a face-off in terms of gymnastics. Like you're speaking of the boxing reference, like you've referenced Katie Taylor as well as someone who's inspired you as well on the world stage.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's people seem surprised that I say Katie Taylor is one of my biggest inspirations in sport, and I can't for the life of me understand why. She's the greatest of all time in what she does, and has any Irish athletes been able to say that's completely undisputed like Katie Taylor has? That to me is just remarkable, and to see an Irish athlete do that is very, very inspirational to me, and it shows to me that why can't I aim for that too?
What does that mean for you then over the next period of time? Like, I know you're in the absolute sweet spot of greatness at the moment, and the Olympics is on your radar. How long can you be a full-time gymnast for? Is there an exterior life that you need to fall back into and kind of develop at the same time, so that gives you a little bit of comfort or escape from gymnastics, or is it purely in the gymnastics bubble at the moment? What's that like?
I mean, I love what I do, so it makes that hard work even more bearable. I want to go into the gym and push my body and mind to the limits, and maybe there is a time limit on that, but the guy that came third in the Palma horse final, he's 38. he's 38. That's crazy. He's the oldest world medalist ever, though, so that's a little bit of an exception, and I don't feel like I'll go to 38 years old in this sport, which is fine by me. But that just kind of shows the time frame. I could be doing this into my 30s, so that's a very exciting thing. So hopefully there's a lot more gold medals to come with that.
And is there a separate career plan? Do you find that you need to dedicate all of your brain space to thinking about and visualization and rest, or do you actually want to go and study and develop that other part of your life so that these two things kind of coexist? What's your strategy and approach to that?
Yeah, well, I'm a qualified gymnastics coach now, so I'm trying to work my way up the qualifications and hopefully one day become a coach, maybe open up my own club. There's a lot of ambition outside of gymnastics. Well, outside of my actual gymnastics career, it's still pertaining to gymnastics, because I feel like it would almost be a wasted knowledge, of me being in this sport for all of my life and then just stopping it and moving on to something else and starting fresh. I would love to carry on that knowledge that I've gained throughout the years and pass it on to the younger generation and help them become world champions and hopefully even beat my achievements.
Who took you first to a gymnastics club? What was the impetus behind that?
It was just my mum and dad. They took me to just a local leisure centre. It was a gymnastics club. They just had, benches, that kind of school PE equipment in terms of gymnastics. And I just loved it straight away. Even the simplicity of, the small square trampoline that I could jump off onto a soft mat. That was awesome to me. That was so cool. And there was something that, I always say that I was doing gymnastics before I went to that gymnastics club. I was always bouncing on my own trampoline in my back garden, climbing trees, teaching myself how to do a backflip on the trampoline. So when I got that opportunity to go to those facilities, it was very nice.
And when did you start deciding that, okay, I'm going to just do nothing but this now for a while and get good at it, basically?
It was when I was 8. So for some reason, I remember this conversation very vividly with my mum. I had to leave gymnastics training very early one evening to go to football practice. And, I love doing other sports. I love doing football. But I remember just saying, like, I just want to focus on gymnastics. I felt like there's guys in that gymnastics gym working hard, and I was leaving and going and playing football, and I just wanted to be in that gymnastics gym all the time and improving my skills.
Do you see yourself, you sound like someone who is, but like a student of other sports as well, Rhys? Like you're watching other sports people, like you mentioned Katie Taylor there, but whether it's boxers or golfers or footballers, like almost picking up little bits here and there and tidbits of information from people outside your own sport?
Yeah, certainly. I think my go-to is definitely boxing. All the amateur boxers and the professionals too. I love their mindset, and of course, as I said, 80% of my sport, I believe, is mindset. So, when I do look at those boxers and they genuinely believe that they're going to go to these fights and win, that's something that I feel like a lot of sports people might not do, and I feel like I can do that. I feel like I can handle the pressure of saying, I want to become world champion, and I go and do it. So and it might take that 5th world championships that I go to get it, but I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do it.
It's a real Irish thing, isn't it? That inhibition and not being willing to kind of put yourself out there and say I'm going to be the best, because we're kind of naturally the opposite, maybe as a nation. I know that's a generalised statement, but overall I think we are. So I think we attach ourselves to people like yourself and athletes who are so ultra confident on the world stage, like borderline cocky, and I mean that in a positive sense. Like it's so refreshing to see someone like that.
Yeah, and I understand it. I really do. I understand why people don't like to say, I want to do this and do that. But what I like when I do interviews is I just speak my mind. I speak what's motivating me to train. And when I say that, I want to become world champion, that I'm telling you that that's what motivates me every day to go into that gym and work harder than ever. And that's why this world championship medal is such a huge deal to me. But I think also a reason people don't state their goals is because they like to keep it foggy. So if they don't achieve that goal, then it's not such a big deal. And I feel like that's why I take my defeats so hard. And that's why after the Olympic Games final, when I fell, went into the room and kicked the door off the hinges. I was so angry because I knew that was my goal, to go there and have a podium finish, and it didn't happen. But as long as as I said, don't let that continue into my training and into other competitions, then it won't be a problem. It'll only motivate me more.
Well, now you've got the gold to back that up, and so that frees you from any burden of any of the past, and you do actually just look back at it as part of the motivation to get you to that first gold. It's 21 months to the Olympic Games in Paris. Have you got every single second of every day mapped out to that, or is there a little bit of time for that kind of calendaring just yet?
Yeah, well, we've got I'm going to have 2 weeks off, 1 or 2 weeks off here, and that's much needed. It's been a long year, a difficult year, and it's just one of those years where our competition season was just all year round. This is the first time that I'm not in competition mode. So I'm just going to enjoy living somewhat of a normal life, socialise with my friends a little bit more, and spend some family time as well. It'll be nice coming up to Christmas with, knowing I've got the job done this year, having done my greatest achievement ever, and live a bit of a normal life.
Is your diet ridiculous? Do you have to load the calories on, or do you have to keep them off? Like what? How do you balance your weight? How does that work?
It's more about energy, really. So I wouldn't really put on fat. I'd probably say I have about 8% body fat, and that's just because of the intensity of our training. That's the style of training that we do, where I would just burn off all of the calories. So my nutritionist is always wanting me to eat more carbohydrates, because they would fuel me for my sessions, and that's more of the aim behind my nutrition, is fueling my sessions and then recovering afterwards.
So how many calories a day would you be eating?
I couldn't give you an honest answer. I don't count calories.
Right.
I just count protein or carbohydrates, because I feel like I would get too obsessed about it.
Okay.
I would get too involved in it and want to be I think it would affect my gymnastics maybe, so I let my nutritionist do all the counting, and she just recommends me big dietary requirements.
And is that like lots, eat lots and lots and lots? Is that, are you basically eating all day?
Pretty much. It's eat more than I think, or more than my stomach thinks as well. So I'm filling myself quite well in every meal, or I try to anyway.
Well, listen, congratulations. Enjoy whatever the downtime brings you over the next couple of weeks. And the whole country is now invested emotionally in gymnastics. Apart from your achievement of being our first ever gold medalist and our greatest ever gymnast, you've turned the whole country onto a sport, which is kind of Katie Taylor-esque in its own way, Rhys.
Yeah, true. And it's always been one of my major goals in this sport, is just to promote it, to give young people the opportunity that I've had and the joy that I take from this sport. And I feel like this is it's a great opportunity to promote that.
Yeah, good stuff, Rhys. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks so much.
It's world champion Rhys McClenaghan there with his gold medal on the breakfast table. 9 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM, brought to you live with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mow. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. We're going to talk to Graham Hunter in a moment, but first I want to tell you Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Each week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. To enter, check out @OffTheBall on Twitter. Like and retweet our Braeburn competition post and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the very best on-the-go coffee experience on the road. It's available at Apple Green today. We're talking Ger and Pique next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Zebo going on his own. He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Carver gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mows.
10 minutes past 8. Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, good morning to you.
Lads, morning.
Nice of the European draws yesterday to fix it, so we've loads to talk about this morning. Before we get to the magnificent European draws, Gerard Piqué has mid-season retired, and we were talking about the retirement video where it finishes with a delicate shot of him staring up at the president's box, and we all know what the implication is here. It's like, oh, I'm coming back to rule over you, baby. It's a remarkable end, I guess, but probably predictable in some ways. I don't know, what do you make of the whole thing?
Nah, it's shocking. I agree with everything you've said. In the actual event itself, given that he played at Camp Nou, they won, he played well. The send-off was not discreet, but it was well handled. Everybody stayed. The Camp Nou was full. It was buzzing. He got the appreciation that somebody who's won 2 trebles and a World Cup, a European Championship, repeat Champions League, somebody who's a local boy, born with a long goal kick of the stadium, somebody whose grandfather was at the club long before he was born, a footballer of real, genuine class. People are arguing now about whether he's not just the greatest centre-half in the history of Barcelona, but in the history of Spain. That's for other people to argue. I don't really care about charts like that, but it's all wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. He is, particularly in the absence of Koundé and Araujo while they've been injured, he remains the solution to Barcelona's problems. He's been forced out, partly because he's a pungent character, but most principally because he earns so much money at a time when the club is desperately in need of saving wages, not just to save their outlays, but to balance financial fair play as far as La Liga is concerned next summer. The money that Gerard Piqué and Jordi Alba and Busquets earn jointly is literally phenomenal. Busquets ends his contract this year. Piqué had another year of contract. Alba's got another year of contract. If we're honest, we're talking about them being net up in the region of that 60 million in terms of what Barcelona can save if they get rid of those 3 guys, those captains. Whether Alba goes, I have my doubts. But there's also deferred money owed to them, bonus money. The contracts that were negotiated under the previous board were ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And therefore, what's happened is that they've played on, as you and Shane both know, they've played on the fact that Piqué has always said, I'm not going to finish my career at Barcelona on the bench. I'm not going to hang around. I've got better things to be doing in my life. I want to get on with things. I should be playing. And if I'm not playing, I'll go. So they pushed Xavi to say, bench him. He was benched and he went. The fact remains that he is still a footballer who should be in the team 90% of the weeks this season. The retirement should have come at the end of the season. He has the solutions, the experience, the height, the passing, that he can get over the fact that because he's not been playing and he turns 36 next February, there have been the occasional mistake here and there. He is the guy that could have seen them towards the title, a title which is now at least in the mix again after Madrid's defeat at Rayo Vallecano last night.
Is there a possibility he ends up somewhere else playing football? No?
Absolutely. Well, listen, because Piqué is the most extraordinary guy you could meet in football. Maybe I was too strong there, but he's always said that he will never now play for another football club. He's got dreams about what he does with Andorra, the club that he's president, co-owner of. He's got dreams to do with the Davis Cup. He's got business investments to make. But he's also got a situation where he's split from his partner, Shakira. I don't follow or care much about the social lives and the personal lives of the great stars, but it's a fact that Shakira wants to move to Miami. The two boys who were at the send-off match there against Almeria at the weekend, he wants to be near them. So going and playing for another club simply because there's football or money on offer and seeing less of his boys, just that won't happen. If somebody actually came and persuaded him that, you know, he should go and play for Inter Miami or something like that, then I suppose there's a 1% chance. My bet is that he doesn't play club football again after tonight. We're in Barcelona, travel to Pamplona to face Osasuna.
When you say one of the most extraordinary people in football, Graham, what do you mean by that? And what's the Gerard Piqué that you've come to know?
Well, the Gerard Piqué I've come to know, people know their story, Shane. One example of the things that we've been, the moments we've been involved together would have been on the night of Spain winning the World Cup final. I've been in the dressing room filming. Outside it, Piqué came out still in boots, shorts and his undershirt with a bottle of beer in his hand, looking for the goal nets. He only had a little pair of, nail scissors that go with clipping bandages from the doctor. Went down to the pitch, came back up, was furious. The nets had gone because they'd been celebrating so long. Nobody from FIFA or the stadium would help him. I decided to help him. We went on a grand tour of the stadium, the two of us. I shouldn't have been doing that, but he was angry and he was getting a little bit tetchy. And I thought there's a situation brewing here. And after a long odyssey of a journey that I won't go into, but had incidents of its own, we ended up in the manager of the stadium, his office, and there was a little worker there, a guy in a little anorak, a real job's worth, more than my job's worth. And he did a sort of poker tell. Piqué's a big poker man, Shane, with hundreds of thousands being bet on his career. And he did a little tell that no, it's not here, and looked down there, and there was a big cardboard box like that. And the guy ran as we were talking to pick up the box and try and lock it in a cupboard. And Piqué said to me, this is Piqué on the night of the World Cup final winning it. He said, listen, I'll punch him, you grab the nets and we'll run for it. And I promise you, that was serious. He was furious. He wanted his nets. Just won the World Cup and you won't let me clip a little panel of net. And it went off and there were officials in the office and they threatened to sack me, and Piqué was absolutely raging. And I'll punch him, you take the nets and we'll run. It sounds like it's from an Ealing comedy or something like that, but I use that as an example of what he's up to. He's ferocious, he's aggressive. He really, listen, I know he pisses people off. The board, he's been a nightmare for the board. They've tried to put exclusion clauses in his contract about what he can and can't do. Shane, which other footballer brings $250 million in sponsorship to the front of a jersey of a major club in the world? The club couldn't do it, but Piqué could. Which other player in your lifetime, football player, has gone out and bought the Davis Cup? I could go on and on and on and on and on. But in terms of his mind, his aggression, the way he'll sneer at players who aren't up to his teammates, who aren't his standards, aren't bright enough. He's a haughty, difficult, aggressive, brilliant, competitive, challenging man. And he's already, at 35, a businessman of extraordinary stature. And I think in those terms, at least, I think he dwarfs anybody else that's gone before him in modern football, full stop.
So is there an obvious path to power at Barcelona, or will it be something different, do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I still refer you to the point about his two boys. People have been talking about the campaign has started already. Well, if Shakira gets custody and moves them to Miami, then Gerard Piqué temporarily being looking to run the club in Catalonia seems to me to be something that I'm unsure about. The path to glory is that Barcelona is still owned by its members. There are elections. It's guaranteed that a president can only stand 2 mandates. There must be elections every 5 years. There will come a time when his personal situation and his business situation allows him to put himself forward for the presidency. Whether that's immediately or not is something that I don't know as a fact. I wouldn't claim to know. Unless I did, then I'd tell you. Short term, I think Laporta is probably safe. And it would be very like Piqué not to sit and wait and be ordinary until the financial situation is better. And Barcelona have been in Montjuic, where they're scheduled to move this summer. So the season's in Montjuic. Big clubs without their own stadium tend to be horrible places, traumatic places. The time you're outside the stadium or the time you're living in the stadium it's been built, that always elongates. Normal people would say, I tell you when I want to be president, it's when the good times are back. That's not the way Piqué thinks. It would be typical of him to say, now when the club most needs me, he doesn't do it for ego. He certainly doesn't do it to please people or for adulation. He does it because he's got a vision. So I think he would like to be taking over promptly, but I don't think his family situation allows that. I think we've got a little bit of time, and then in due course, health allowing, we'll see President Piqué.
All right, going to be very interesting to follow that career and see what happens in the meantime. I do want to. So the Liverpool Real Madrid draw. I think Shane, you were making the joke, or somebody was making the joke earlier on about how got to be careful what you wish for when you're Florentino Perez. I want to play the big teams more often. Like, okay, we're going to fix that now for you, Florentino. Straight away, we're going to get you 2 games against Liverpool, exactly what you wanted in the European Super League. Against that backdrop, right? Today, Manchester City have announced record profits and record revenue. They're the second highest revenue generators in the history of English football. Manchester United beat them a couple of seasons ago, the last season before COVID, I think. And FSG made their slightly Jesuitical statement yesterday about looking for more investment. But, you know, if somebody wants to buy the whole thing, that might also be on the table, definitely. Knowing all that, this is kind of a roundabout way to ask you about the ownership of Liverpool and where the game is going at the moment. We're definitely watching an era of the biggest billionaires being trumped by nation states. Have you any thoughts on the Liverpool takeover?
Yes, I could. I mean, it's not only a complicated subject. You've asked it in a complicated way, because first of all, you're comparing it with a country where 2 of the leading clubs are still member run. Florentino Perez is treated like an owner and acts like an owner, but in theory, he still needs to be elected. And given his age, there'll come a stage whereby change will occur at Real Madrid. And I remember across all the 20-something years that you and I have been broadcasting together on this station, there have been halcyon times when everybody in Ireland or Scotland or England is saying, well, membership ownership is the only way to go. And then you get an idiot like Bartomeu ruining Football Club Barcelona. In terms of state and billionaire ownership of clubs, particularly in the Premier League, we've passed the point of no return. I fail to imagine a governing body or a government which will say, this is how football clubs, we're going to enact law such that football clubs can't be owned in this manner. And for so long as individuals, corporations, or nation states feel that there are benefits beyond returns. You talked about Manchester City's financial returns that they announced the other day. However you want to phrase it, there are extremely different reasons why the people that own Paris Saint-Germain and own Liverpool and own Chelsea and own Manchester City and own Manchester United are in the game. Now, in terms of Manchester United, the people own them, I think, are in it for their own personal financial gain. The majority of the rest of them, either like Bowley, I think, believe that they're in it for a little bit of fun, a little bit of ego, and potentially Fenway, for example, bought at a very low price, and are gonna, if they sell, they're going to sell at a big profit. But it's about growing the brand, growing the club, selling, buying short and selling long. Yearly profits, that's something that the Glazers have done because of their model of how they, personal profit, how they run the club. So there's, even though we're now talking about very different in all the clubs we've named in the Premier League from the way that Barcelona and Real Madrid are owned and run, there's a wide variety of reasons that people are in for it. And if nation states believe that they can help their image or change the way that people perceive them or make people come and visit them on holiday, I see absolutely no way back from this, either from the Premier League, the FA, or any putative future UK government.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, and I think that Liverpool fans need to be a little bit anxious about new potential investment, where it's going to come from, new potential owners, where it's going to come from. There's always a royal family who has another member who's a separate company, and so therefore it's not the same thing, but actually, you know, they're related somewhere along the way. I
don't want to pick on some of the Liverpool fans who I've seen going, well, this is good, or Fenway aren't spending enough, or our current dip is because, as far as I can tell, looking at their football, watching their trophy lifts, but talking to their staff, in general, Fenway have been extremely good owners in terms of particularly backing the department that chooses how to select managers, how to sell players, how to buy players. There's been a full integration of, we know you're experts, we'll fund you to the degree we're willing to, and then we'll leave you to get on with it, and well done, and here's support, and let's review. And while Liverpool fans are ticked off, because none of us have got any patience now about the current situation, and a lot of wise people I see going, well, I knew. And in the time that Fenway have been in charge of Liverpool, they've done a damn good job of supporting the people who run it locally, either in terms of organisation, scouting, or the football side. They've been good owners that have utterly changed the recent fortunes of Liverpool Football Club. So you're right. What happens next, like you said about Florentino, be careful what you wish for.
The defeat last night that Real Madrid suffered to Vallecano, it wasn't that much of a shock, was it? Totally a shock, given Vallecano not been pretty good recently. Toni Kroos was out, I think.
Kroos was out, Benzema was out. In recent matches, let's set the Celtic game aside, where Celtic went out and played toe-to-toe and got a spanking, because Madrid love games like that. It was all very entertaining, and you can see that Ange Postecoglou is very consistent in what he asks. There isn't criticism in my voice of it, but in recent matches, particularly home draws, you've seen Madrid's level, intensity dropping a little bit. So with no Benzema, no Kroos against the side on a very tight pitch in a very hostile, very colourful stadium, the idea that they might lose was not ludicrous. The fact that they would lose 3 goals and lose in that manner, I think, has been a little bit surprising, and the degree to which they were outfought, outcompeted. You can find Rayo Vallecano ferocious, and what's more, Rayo are really look out for their coach, Iraola, ex-Athletic in Spain, rightful back. Manchester City group had him for a little while at New York. That guy's a proper coach. Really, really special.
United Barca in the Europa League as well, Graham. Quite an interesting draw. Can I just ask you one aspect on that? Something that struck me at the weekend was, and it's a bit of a query over here, the fact that David De Gea has been one of the bright sparks for United in recent games, the last 3 or 4 games, albeit conceding 3 at the weekend. But he's not been named in Spain's 55-man squads, which would suggest that, you know, they think that there's 4 goalkeepers better off than him. So, look, he's a man who played every game in the 2018 World Cup, so it seems like a bit of a fall from grace. But is it a surprise in Spain that he's not in the reckoning for the World Cup?
I don't know if it's a fall from grace if you're not in one World Cup 4 years after the other one, Shane. Yeah. And I think that, look, you're right in that when a goalkeeper is playing well for a couple of games for Manchester United, he's going to get local press. But you've seen Luis Enrique Martinez long enough to know that that's not how he operates. He doesn't say, well, boy, that fella's had a couple of good games. I'm now going to forget the things that I didn't like about him. So in terms of De Gea's form over the last couple of years, there's been criticism around him from Manchester United. He's talked about himself needing to improve. Originally, it was thought that he was good enough with his feet to make him special beyond his saves. There was a time when Luis Enrique thought that too. Luis Enrique wasn't in charge in Russia, remember. Now, the goalkeepers he's picked, it is absolutely paramount that they are brilliant with their feet. He's as insistent as Pep Guardiola is that the team is 11 footballers, and that the 11th man is also an exceptional goalkeeper. Now, whether or not having seen enough of your man at Brentford or Sanchez at Brighton, neither in terms of big pressure matches in the Premier League nor for Spain, whether during Qatar people are ultimately going to say, well, coach, you got it wrong, De Gea should have been there. That's a different debate. But Luis Enrique Martinez, Shane, is extremely consistent in what he does and doesn't want. And once you're out, particularly in the goalkeeping role, it tends to be a very long road back, and I'm in no way surprised that he won't be in the list on 11th of November.
Frankie de Jong finally heading to Old Trafford as well. It's an intriguing tie in a number of ways, Graham.
Boom. Yeah. Just remember, he's the one who stopped the whole thing, didn't want it to happen, said, I'm not coming. Yeah, it's an interesting tie. And, you know, I speak to Xavi outside press conferences, and that's a little privilege, and I like him very much. And appreciate very much that we've got a guy of his vision and his ideas back in football. Doesn't have to be a Barcelona for my taste. I think well of him. Occasionally he's still a little bit naive. He's the worst team we could have got. It's happened again. You know, it was what was it? Galatasaray, Napoli, Eintracht Frankfurt last season. You know, Galatasaray away, Napoli away, plus the ultimate winners. We were a group this season. This is his words, not mine. Inter and Bayern Munich. And yesterday he went, and now we've got United. Gee, thanks. The worst team. You don't say that. You never say that. It's going to be fun. On form, Barcelona are becoming more interesting. In Europe, they've looked porous at the back. Yes, there's a danger that they get knocked out. I think it's going to be a beautiful tie. February is further away than it should be, normally speaking, in November because of this World Cup, and therefore I haven't got the faintest idea who goes through. And you can use that clip over and over again for the rest of my life.
But it's the same with the Liverpool Real Madrid. It's like, who knows who's going to still be fit when these teams meet.
Yep.
And so we were talking about this yesterday with Nana Manua. If Man City have to reintegrate those English players after just say they've won a World Cup, like we were whispering it, lest it, knock 3 times, make sure it doesn't happen.
I said I have no idea about Manchester United, but I do have an idea about that. No chance.
Right. Well, just imagine having to get Phil Foden and Jack Grealish back playing football after a week on the complete piss. Like, they could take a couple of months off if they were to win it.
Something stronger than that, so long as you don't want me off the air. Over my career, in an interview once with Zidane, and because Shurla was a Chelsea player and I was at the Chelsea training ground interviewing, and the staff told me, those players, Zidane talked about needing 6 months to even come to terms with having won the World Cup in '98. Lost, didn't know what was happening, putting in the same effort, not getting the same returns. Shurla went to his staff and said, I have no idea why I'm playing rubbish. I'm training as hard. And this was nothing to do with celebrations or alcohol or mentally going, I'm a world champion, I'm going to take a couple of months off. The two of them in particular were talking about the effect that life-changing impact has on you is beyond your own control. Now, maybe not every player will be like that, but in some of the clubs that we generically talk about, and in some of the clubs we're talking about right now, there probably should be World Cup winners. So as you point out, irrespective of, you were talking about going on the lash in England, but there's something much, much more profound than even, it's not about tiredness, it's about state-changing impact that sometimes elite footballers have no idea what's going on or how to cope with it.
Yeah, great point. I hadn't even thought of that. Like, if Vinicius scores the winner in the World Cup final, it's like you're ascending onto an entirely different plane. How do you come back down and then be at Anfield looking around you going, your man's kicking me, but I just won the World Cup. Like, I don't really care about this tonight. Or else he comes back and is like, I'm going to score a hat-trick tonight because I'm the greatest thing of all time.
The impact, in my opinion, will be for the players you're talking about in England, away to Fulham, away to Brentford, oh God, here we go again, and do we have to go down there, or a cup game up at Carlisle, or in Spain it'll be like, gee, do we have to get our legs kicked off down at Almeria, or it's all the way up north to the Basque Country where it's for us again. And that's where I think the gear change, where you're like, what's happening to me? Why I want this, but it's not there. That's where I think the impact comes. And given the way we talk about, and given the way that the Champions League inevitably will feature the type of footballers we're talking about, there are also going to be several footballers who are going there right now genuinely believing they're going to win, and who won't. Some will react with, right, I'll show you for the rest of the season. And some will be sitting, sucking their thumb in the corner, moping.
Yeah. It's we haven't a clue what's going to happen in the second half of this season. It is going to be wild. Graham, brilliant to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Lads.
It's Graham Hunter there giving us some. That's it. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, Spain are more likely to win the World Cup. So then all of a sudden, United and Liverpool are going, these lads will be.
Are Spain more likely than England?
I would have thought so, yeah. I don't know what the bookies think, but geez, surely.
I think we're all sleeping on how good England are, unfortunately. Right. 8:34 this morning, OTB AM brought to you live with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. Up next, we're live in studio with none other than Eric Donovan, fresh from his retirement announcement at the end of last week. First, here's the Athletics' Matt Slater on last night's show, talking with Joe about Newcastle United's unbelievable form.
It is going to be interesting what reception the new buyer gets from fans, because the American investment group, while politically they may be more acceptable, they do come front and centre with the message that we're here to make money and we don't have any emotional attachment to your club. Were Bahrain to turn up with gazillions and say, we are going to turn you guys into the Harlem Globetrotters, I think it's such an interesting question. Liverpool fans have had a certain I don't know what engagement with the politics beyond football and pride themselves on it, I think, and pride themselves on a sense of community and pride themselves on values. It would be quite something to see them wearing the headscarves a la the Newcastle fans on inaugural day of the new regime. It's hard to imagine from this vantage point, but then again, gazillions are gazillions.
Indeed. Look, Newcastle's a left-leaning city too. Liverpool's famous sort of trade unions. Of course, there's a Spirit of Shankly. It does seem a weird cultural fit to me. And I think one of the things about Newcastle, of course, is that it was very much an opposition to the previous owner.
Yeah.
They hated Ashley so much, and the entire city and region felt a bit left behind and ignored. Similar arguments in Liverpool, of course, but. Fenway Sports Group have been pretty good owners, so there isn't this sort of like we've been ignored, we've been badly run, we're just looking for a saviour. I don't think Liverpool fans, I wouldn't have much time for them if that's what they were saying, frankly, as a neutral here, and they're not. So fine. So I agree with what you're saying. I just sense this is Americans selling to Americans. I know it's a bit easy.
Yeah.
They've hired Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. I just think that's where this is going.
Here we go. It's 8:37 and I'm delighted to say former boxer Eric Donovan is with us. How you doing?
I'm very well, Ger. Thanks for having me. Yeah, delighted to be here.
How is it settling with you now that you made your announcement?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying to me like it must have been tough and do you feel sad and all those things, and there's an element of truth in that. I am a bit sad and it is tough, but it's the right time, and I'm going out, with peace of mind. I came back in. I turned professional at the start with a load of regrets because I felt unfulfilled, let's say. But I'm going out of it now with absolutely no regrets and peace of mind, and I think it's the right time.
Was it in your head before this fight, or is it after the fight? Because I think it's really important that we talk about the fact you had a baby at the same time as this.
Yeah.
It's a life-changing moment at any stage.
Absolutely, yeah.
But particularly when you're a fighter, and it's such a difficult business. I don't think anybody, unless you've actually been to a fight, you don't really fully appreciate the punishment that fighters take until you see it aftermath. In the aftermath, just how difficult it is for your body to recover.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I'm. What's the story?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a brutal sport. It's really, really tough. And I suppose even though I kind of thought that, I kind of knew that before I turned professional, it's still even more difficult than you can imagine, because I was an amateur boxer for years. From the age of 7, I walked into a boxing club, and by the age of early teenage years, I was getting picked to represent Ireland at schoolboy level, so 13, 14 I'm representing Ireland, and by the age of 17 I'm in with the national team, the elite senior team. So and I spent 10 years there, so I was 27, 28 when I kind of unofficially retired from the amateur game, and during that kind of I had a 3-year kind of sabbatical, so but I was watching a lot of boxing, doing the odd bit of training, and I was full of regret, as I said. So I used to ponder down, my mind was pondering back down memory lane from time to time, and I was thinking, I could have done that and I could have done this. It's a terrible place to be, for anybody, and I went back into education as well, as you know, and I was studying counselling and psychotherapy at the time, and I graduated with a diploma in 2015. I was very, delighted with that, because that was huge for me, not coming from an educated background, or having any academic skills. That was a huge moment for me, and I said, right, momentum's with me now. I'm going to go for my degree one more year, and really push the bar, and but then I also was kind of what would you say, bombarded with these thoughts of past regrets, you know what I mean, and past near misses and setbacks and all that. And the conclusion I came to was, look, I got to answer this call, because if I don't, I'm going to be living the rest of my life, probably a bitter, angry old man, and that was it. I said, the conclusion was, I can always go back and do my degree, but I can't always go back and box. So at 31, I turned pro when most people are wrapping up their careers at 31, and into a game of like a brutal sport, professional game, and I had absolutely no major goals, but in the back of my mind I was like, an Irish title would be brilliant, it would be class, and I was doing a lot of punditry as well, so I said I'll be able to speak in the punditry kind of position, or the punditry role, with expert analysis as well. So once I got going and I got a bit of momentum going, I got a few fights under my belt, and obviously I won the Irish title, but I kind of felt like I had a lot more than I thought I did have, but I knew I was in a tough game as well, and so I pushed the bar out, and for the last 3 or 4 years I've been telling everybody my goal is to become a European champion, and that can be like a very tricky thing to do, very risky thing to do, because we're putting ourselves out there to be scrutinised, to be either glorified or to kind of be slammed. And Rhys, your last Rhys McClenaghan, he's brilliant, and I was just listening to that interview, and I think it's important that we kind of we set these goals for ourselves, but don't be afraid of announcing them and letting people know. And anyway, for me, look, it was a happy ending. It was I think the professional chapter in my life from 31 to 37, 6.5 years, has been a success story. I had some big fights, some big losses on big stages, but ultimately I reached my goal.
I know. I was like really, desperately concerned if you didn't make it, what the outcome would have been. Because you did put all the eggs in that basket, and I think it would still have been a success story if you hadn't got if you hadn't won your last fight, because your story isn't just about trying to win the belt. Your story was, you framed it as a redemption story, right? And that's because you were coming back from dark places. And whether or not you won or lost, that was a judgment on the night.
Yeah.
But the judgment on your life is that you've come back from those dark places.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've heard many people saying, you've already cemented your legacy or your name in the boxing history books from your amateur pedigree and your amateur career. And I'm just like,
you didn't buy it, did you?
No, I didn't, because I kind of felt like, even though I'm a European medalist as an amateur, and that's world class, that's a world class level, because the European continent is one of the strongest continents in boxing, so I just didn't, but I felt unfulfilled, especially missing out on the Olympics and everything. And then nowadays, amateur boxers, you can see them on YouTube. YouTube screen everything, But when I was boxing in the amateur days, I think I might have boxed on RT once or twice in the senior final. So there wasn't a lot of, apart from the boxing community, people in the boxing community knew exactly what I'd done. But the general public had no real kind of understanding. But now I kind of feel like, okay, I have redeemed myself, and I have shown, I have fulfilled. You know what I mean? Fulfilled.
So the fulfillment comes from the outcome, in a way. And that's a separate thing, really, from changing your life to the point where you're able to be the man you are now.
When I look at growing up, when I was an amateur, I looked at Kenneth Egan, I looked at Darren Sutherland, Michael Conlon, Paddy Barnes, obviously Katie Taylor, and I just thought I'd never in the same bracket as them, because they were achieving their household names or whatever, and I always kind of was in awe of them, but at the same time feeling very sad and depressed because of my own issues, and I couldn't overcome them, or I couldn't address them. I didn't know how to seek out the help, how to ask for help.
What changed with that? How did you fix that?
I suppose, that's a great question. I suppose you you just get to a stage where you become overwhelmed by it, like that there is no, it's like a boiling pot, you know, the lid just ready to burst, you know, and that's what I was like, you know. I used to suppress an awful lot of emotions and feelings, and you think you're doing the right thing, but you know, you can't solve a problem by running away from a problem. The problem is not going to go away, you know. But I realised that today, but I used to suppress everything, and then they would come out in a very unhealthy and toxic way, whether it's through drink or drugs or whatever, and it'd be just kind of, you know, an explosion, a big episode, and then it'd be again try and regroup, and then another big explosion. But I realised, like, when I got to a certain stage in life, that, you know, these emotions, these feelings, these the energy inside, these are very much a part of my being in every way, like, you know, and I cannot run away from them anymore, and I can't ignore them.
This wasn't connected to success or failure in boxing. This is like just real life, right?
Real life, yeah.
It's
human life,
separate.
yeah.
It's
boxing was kind of in some ways a little bit of what would you say, a bit of solace in all of this, you know what I mean? It was respite, you know. Sometimes when I went to boxing, I was free from the madness of my own mind, and free from you know, the feelings, the emotions, and it just used to go into boxing mode, you know. And then that kind of to cover up.
To get to the point you are now, do you have to go back and ask what caused the madness in your mind, or do you just have to learn to cope with the fact that there is a bit of madness in all of us?
Yeah,
with
that's very true. There is a bit of madness in us all, a bit of good in the worst of us, a bit of bad in the best of us as well. Do you know? But I did have to, first of all, take ownership. You know, that's the first thing. Like, you cannot solve a problem if you don't see it, if you don't think it's there, if you don't acknowledge it, you know. So I was in denial for a long, long time, you know, with a lot of stuff, you know, that I suppose I never really took full acceptance of what was going on for me. And I always blamed, in a way, kind of directed it towards maybe different areas, you know, different things. It was because of this or because of that, you know. And then eventually I had to say, look, it's me, you know. There's a famous quote from Marty Rubin, a Canadian author. It says, the truth is what's left when you run out of excuses, you know. And that's what it was for me. And I was kind of left with my raw, vulnerable self. And then at that stage, you're kind of like, well, which way do I go now? Do I jump off, or do I ask for help? And, you know, I asked for help, you know. And that was the beginning of a whole new avenue for me, a whole new life, a redemption story.
Are you allowing yourself a bit of nostalgia now, Eric? Like, are you thinking back in the last few days to walking into St Michael's Boxing Club in Athy for the first time? Has it just even hit you yet? Like, it's probably like winning the European title. It probably takes a bit of time to realise that you're retired and finished.
Yeah, it's really, really it's incredible. And even when I think back to the boxing club in Athy, what that done for me, like, you know, that was a real game changer for me. It gave me direction, it gave me purpose, it gave me, you know, it was my education, really. You know, it got me out of town. I definitely wouldn't have left Athy town if it wasn't for the club, you know, because, like I said, school wasn't an area that I really done well in. And, you know, Athy is a working class town. You know, education and sport are very important down there, you know, to really move out of it and do well for yourself. So the boxing club, even though at times it became an annoyance for me too, because I tried to run away from the club so many times because it was getting in the way of this, you know, the life I want to live with the boys and the girls hanging around and dossing and messing and whatnot. But that's when the coach Dom would follow me around, you know.
Would he literally come to your house?
He would, yeah. Pulled me out of a house party and everything before because I promised him I would fight in a show, you know, and I went missing, you know, and he pulled me out of his house party, brought me to the boxing show. So I even still boxed, you know what I mean? And I remember getting out of the ring. It was an open air show in Mullingar, and I remember getting out of the ring and I fell asleep in my boots and all my gear at ringside afterwards. But but like, so grateful, like, and lucky that I had that kind of.
So I still think that I'm sorry to labour this point. You fixed something that most people don't get to fix, right? And so we're from the same town. I know what you're talking about. I know the corners that you would have been standing on.
Yeah.
And I know the school system didn't work properly for you. And how did you survive that? Like, what?
Yeah.
Where's the bit where you get the strength to ask for help, or even know how to ask for help?
That's a good one. You know, I suppose. you know, I heard someone say before, the crack is where the light gets in, you know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, I put up a good fight for a very long time, you know, about like trying to hold on to this way, you know, and trying not to trying to deflect, basically, mainly for most of my life. But I remember many times, a lot of tears, a lot of really sad times, you know, especially sitting down with the family, like, you know, here I go again, how did this happen, and that kind of stuff. And
because you'd cause trouble. Yeah,
but like mainly the trouble would be just like my own really incompetence, like just really slipping up or messing up, and then I'd be devastated again, depressed, probably said something I didn't mean, probably did something I shouldn't have done, that kind of stuff. And then it always led to guilt, remorse, shame, embarrassment, and you know, whether it was internal or external, it was all, you know, and it was just, I became sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I used to look at everybody else and think, how are they doing it, you know? Wanted to be like everybody else, like normally socialising, normally having a drink, going out, coming home, this kind of stuff, and it just wouldn't work for me, you know? Like, I couldn't do it, you know? Even like, if I had one drink, I'd be just like, you know, wired, like, you know, it had a different effect on me.
Are we still living in a tie at this stage?
Yeah. And then, like, I didn't even realise, this is because you asked a very good question, I didn't even realise that there is support out there in the way that it was and the way that it is. For me, it was just if you can't sort this out yourself, you're screwed, you know? Yeah. And that's why at one stage I actually felt that maybe I'd be better off not being here, you know? Because I thought, like, you know, I'm just a burden, I'm just letting people down, letting my coach down, letting my family down, and maybe I'm better off not being here. Like, that's...
And how easy it is for that to happen.
Oh my God, like, it's so very real, very real.
And the other thing is that it's so common that, like, I don't know, I'm in our class there were people who died by suicide, and the town has been unfortunately plagued by it.
Yeah.
So it's right there. Like, there are examples of it, and that's why I think it's important to labour on this, because, like, it's possible. It's really possible, and there's so much in this story, you know. Like,
there's a lot in it. Yeah, and again, the boxing at the time was giving me the only kind of credibility and, you know, kind of respect that I felt that was valued in me, you know, because outside
an identity,
and outside of that, like, I just felt like a nobody, a waster, you know, and that's a very dangerous place to be.
That's how society views people. Who are from working class areas. Yeah. That we decide as a country and as a people, no, there's no value here.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's a real difficult place for us to be in.
You know, we talk about the footballers going across the water as well, like, you know, the sun, you know, promise, you know, the sun, moon and stars, you know, and then it doesn't work out for them, and after spending 4 or 5 years, maybe, you know, development years, you know, over there, and they're coming back, tail between their legs. What do they do? Feel like a waste, feel like a loser, you know. And that, for me, I had a kind of a very difficult relationship with boxing for a while, and with myself, because I kind of then was angry with boxing because I felt like I'm only a boxer, you know. And boxing would consume me to the level of, like, you know, who, you know, didn't know much about values and that kind of stuff. But when I asked for the help initially, Ger, it opened the door to a whole new avenues, a whole new world. I won't say it's easy, because it doesn't happen overnight, but, like, that was the beginning of the process. You know, I started to learn about addiction. I started to learn about mental health, emotional health. I understood why we do the things we do. You know, why I kept doing the things I did, you know. And then I learned more therapeutic and holistic approaches to the self-destructive ones I was using before. And I was like, okay, this is a bit easier. And then during that process, you start to discover what Eric is. Eric, the man, the human being.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about boxing, but when I got back in touch with Eric and started to grow, really grow and develop, that's when I opened the door to going back to fulfilling some unanswered boxing questions.
So does this happen in your mid-20s? Like, after, so the boxing finishes as an amateur and you're bitter about that, is there then that period of, like, self-reflection or a despair, and then the self-reflection comes after that?
2012 was the time I went into recovery for the first time, and after that, the summer of 2012, I helped Katie Taylor out for the Olympic Games, went to the training camp in Assisi, when that was over, I kind of didn't know what to do. Threw my name in the hat for the World Series of Boxing, see what would happen. I got called. I got picked by who? None other than Kazakhstan. So, and the difference in Kazakhstan and all the other franchises was they wanted you out there indefinitely, like for the whole. There's no kind of train at home, go out and buy. So I went out there for like nearly 8 months or something, like, you know, and out there I learned so much about myself, you know, because that was in the early stages of my recovery, and I had a lot of good support from back home, people calling me, ringing me, doing Skype calls and all that. But out there I really grew up, like I really.
So you're sober.
Developed, yeah, and it was incredible. And then when I got back from there, I kind of retired from boxing, unofficially went back into education. So I was 28 going on 28 when I kind of unofficially retired, and then I was 31 when I came back, turned professional. But during that 3-year period, I did a lot of personal growth, a lot of development, and that's when I realised that maybe I can do something here. And you know, it's kind of crazy.
When you talk, Eric, about being like, you know, embarrassed or ashamed of your past or whatever, you're like, it's amazing because you're speaking to so many people who've felt that emotion, of which there are plenty as well.
Yeah.
But like, I've heard you say in recent times as well that you now see your past as an asset, which I think is that's just a emotional shift in your own thinking, I guess, was it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And most people that going around depressed, that would come from similar backgrounds or whatever, probably feel the same way as I used to feel. And message I try and get across to them is that, like, you know, you're not the. Who was it I heard saying this? I think it might have been Brezzy or Jerry Hussey or something that said, you're not the worst thing you ever done. You know what I mean? Some people go around feeling bad, like, you know, they might have made a mistake or they might have, but like, that doesn't define you, you know. We're not responsible for the life we are given, but we are responsible for the life we are living. That's the key, you know. So we're all born into whatever, you know, whatever areas of life, and you know, you kind of develop skills to kind of navigate your way through that, survival techniques or whatever, survival skills. But when you get to an adult, you know, you probably don't need many of those skills anymore. You can go in a different route or whatever route you choose, but you just have to be brave and ask for that kind of help and direction, and that's it. Yeah. But
I don't want to distill your entire career down to just a couple of minutes, but like, you've got the belt sitting in front of us here, and like that El Hadri fight, the 10th round particularly, I think for anyone who watches it back, I mean, that 10th round was it was manic. Like, is that the most defining? It's insane. Yeah. Is that the most defining few minutes of your career?
Yeah, many people have said to me after the fight, the 10th round, man, unbelievable. And I'm like, yeah, was it? Yeah, I did. Like, you know, I'm fighting on instinct. Yeah. So I had to watch it when I got home myself, and then when I was watching, I was like, oh jeez, like I know exactly what they're talking about now. And it's incredible. You know, I train so hard. Like, I train hard. Like, I put my body on the line all the time, put my body through the mill, the track sessions, the strength sessions, and you know, here's the thing as well. Over these last particularly this last year or two, I've been doing prehab and rehab before and after every training session, and it's so annoying. But that's at 37, I had to do that. So grateful for the physio, Vicky McGinn physiotherapy and Drogheda, Sean Kilroy, my strength and conditioning coach, and then obviously with Piqué as well in the Celtic Warriors. Everything had to be meticulous, every single thing, and I worked so hard. So I knew it was in the bank. I always knew that there was one big performance in me. You know, I nearly pulled it off against Barrett. You know, it didn't get close against Ramirez. But I just knew there was something left there, because I knew that all of the work and all of the life experience and all, it had to be for something. And I was just so grateful that I could pull it off in that fight. And in that 10th fight, like, people looking at me were like, I thought you were on the verge of being stopped. But I didn't feel like that in there. Like, I actually felt like I was always in the fight. I knew it was tough, but I never felt like I was ready to bow out or anything, you know.
It's funny because you talk about it being almost a blur. Like, can you take yourself back into your head in that fight at the speed of thought, or is it a case of you just can't remember the entire thing?
I tell you, I was so relieved when I got there, and when I won it, and I was really elated and buzzed, and all the people around me, my family, my wife, my children were there. They saw me getting, you know, really bad defeats against Barrett and Ramirez, and I used to tell them, like, you know, afterwards, you know, sometimes we lose in life, you know, but we have to keep going. I try to always give them lessons of life through my own lessons, you know, and so they were ringside for this greatest victory for me. And my youngest son, Troy, 10 years of age, spot of blood come out and hit him on the forehead, like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. That's how close they were. And I was just so happy to be able to do it, like, for them as well as, you know, like even my wife, after the Ramirez fight, I didn't think I'd even box again. I spoke to Joe and I was like, you know, I could be done here, you know. But she had me to pick myself back up. Like, she said, you set your goal, you know what I mean? You have to go, you know. So a lot of people helped me out, like, you know. And then, of course, you just have to keep picking yourself up and go again and go again. And sometimes we don't know how close we are to actually turning a corner or making it work. In this case, you know, I was very close, you know. From the Ramirez fight was in February. This was September. What's that? 7 months or something?
Was there any part of you after the fight that was like, yeah, I'm going to go again? Or was it fairly quickly you were like, do you know what? Okay.
No, that's great, because like you wouldn't believe it, at 37 here I am retired and I have so many opportunities and like possibilities if I wanted them, you know. And I'm like, where were you a few years ago? But anyway, like even Punchestown Event Centre in Kildare, you know, wanting to host me. Drogheda United Park in Drogheda, wanting to host me, wanting to have a fight there. Incredible meetings and discussions and all of these great possibilities. But you know, I think you can push your luck in this game, Jerry, you know. And I'm kind of like, at 37, all I wanted was this. I've got it. I had my greatest night. I can't top it. A 12-round war. Like, even with professional boxing, it's kind of like, you haven't really, like, in the back of my head, I used to always say, well, you're not really a professional fighter unless you've done 12 rounds, you know, because you have to do 12 rounds. That's the pinnacle, you know. And now I've done that, and you know, I just don't think you can top the night I had. And I'm not naive like enough to think that my next fight you could end up on your backside, and you could bow out that way. And I don't, you know,
what's the point?
What is the point? You know, it's not money or anything like that. That's all I wanted, and I got there, you know. And I think it justifies everything I've done now.
You come in and you've got a pain in your hand still?
I do, yeah. My hand's a bit tender. People are shaking my hands. Well done, Eric. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
And I have to tell them now, stop shaking my hand. I'm kind of like just doing this fist pump. And I'm in no rush to kind of get it looked at because I'm retired. But I got onto my physio a few days ago. I said, you need to refer me or send a referral for an x-ray. So I'm waiting on the call now.
Right. But that's like also a sign to your body is like, that's enough. We're done. We're out. We've had enough now.
Yeah, no, that's true. The body is screaming at me, like, you know, over the last while. Like the Ramirez fight, I couldn't do a running session at all. I was on the bike every time. Like, and for a boxer, you need to be running. Yeah. Running is so amazing. And I just couldn't do it. I was on the bike and I was just so annoyed because of that.
Because of hips or knees or?
A tendon issue on the back of my right knee. Just that big tendon on the back of your leg. So that was the issue, and he used to just get me at the top of the calf, bottom of the hamstring, right there, just above and below the knee, and it, you know, was so annoying. And it's one of these things, you're getting loads of physio on it, but again, it's just wear and tear, you know, the mileage. And but for the El Hadri fight, everything just aligned for me. I obviously had to do a lot of prehab and rehab, but it was like the gods were looking down on me for just this one final time.
It's perfect. I had a DM last night from somebody who I don't know, and I'm not going to mention his name. Hey, Ger, I should have mentioned this earlier when you had the Eric Donovan podcast last year. Some of the chats, I think Oisin McConville especially, stirred me to get the help I needed. He talks about another podcast and says, thank you, and whoever else for producing them. So much shit in the world, thought I'd say something positive here anyway. Like, that impact that you've had, you didn't know about, because I mean, he didn't know you were coming on today, and he didn't know you were going to be here for me to read that to you. Like, that seems to be something that you've managed to build over the last couple of years. You go and you tell your redemption story. Now you're bringing a belt with you. It's like a very powerful force multiplier for everybody in the room.
Yeah, it's very overwhelming, like, you know, and it makes you emotional when you think about that, because like a lot of people helped me out along the way, and I'm just trying to do the next right thing in my life, you know. That's it. I'm just trying to put the right foot forward and do the right thing, and that's the principle I work off in life, is about doing the next right thing, you know. And when I stand up and do these talks, I have another talk today. I'm heading to Cork today. After here, I'll be leaving, heading to Cork. So like, but when I do these talks, I do sometimes feel exposed, you know. Sometimes it's different, it depends, but there is times I give a lot of myself, you know. I do feel exposed afterwards, and I do be like, should I open myself? But then like this, when you get these messages, you know you're doing the right thing. I know I'm doing the right thing, you know.
It only lands with people if it's true, and if you have exposed yourself, and if you have shown that vulnerability. And I think that's why so many people rally behind you. And like, I don't know, is there a book coming? I hope there's a book coming.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. There has been a few conversations, all right, about possibility, and I just said, well, it was before this belt, and I just said, I'm sorry, I can't write a book right now because there's a couple of chapters left to write, but we could possibly look at one now. Yeah.
What reaction do you get when you bring the belt into a classroom? Like, I remember when I was a kid and Kevin McBride came into our classroom after beating Mike Tyson, and just like, you're just thinking, this guy's, it's madness. But like, you must have that reaction because kids must look up to you now as just this otherworldly hero walking in with a belt like that.
Yeah, no, it's really special, it is. And over the last kind of number of years, well, especially the last 2 years when I broke into the European rankings, I used to do a lot of these talks, and I'd finish the talks by saying, here I am in these are the current European rankings, this is where I am, and that's my goal. My goal is to get to the top to win the belt. So for all the talks I used to be doing that, and then I used to say to myself, God, if I don't get this belt, I'm going to be just like left with the guy who made it into the European rankings. But I have now the screenshot of the latest EU European rankings, and it's the top champion, Eric Donovan, before I was even in them, you know, and that's, for me, it's just like, it's incredible.
It's a physical thing, like to walk into a classroom for kids to be able to hold something and go, this is what he won. Like, you just...
Yeah, there's so many schools, there's so many groups now that I have to get back onto and to call into. There's just so many. I don't even want to name any because I leave some out. But yeah, I'm so lucky and grateful that this had an impact on so many people. Not just the belt, it's the whole story, as Ger said. It is a whole redemption story that has many kind of elements to it. And for me, I just love being able to kind of make people proud and happy, you know, and to give them a bit of hope, you know, in a life that can be very, very tough.
100%. So your identity is changing, obviously, evolving from professional boxer onto the next stage of your life. You have picked up a lot of knowledge along the way. There are some interesting openings coming up in Irish boxing. Are you interested in being involved?
I said this before, I don't want to confirm nor deny, but like, I will think I'll always be involved in boxing. You know, I think boxing is my passion. I've so much to offer boxing, and boxing has given me so much. And I actually think that boxing is an amazing sport. Can do so much positive, so much good. It hasn't been shown in the greatest light over recent times, you know, and the people in the boxing, like even at the hierarchy, haven't done themselves any favours, you know. It's even like threatened to be, you know, removed from the Olympic Games, and that would be a travesty. It would be an awful shame if that happened. So, I mean, I'll always champion boxing, like, you know, I'll always kind of be an advocate for it, because I know that the work it does, and I know that the majority of people in it are good people, and I said this before, they're not just boxing coaches, many of them, they're life coaches, and they help people so much. So yeah, I think I'll always be involved. I will say that as a coach, or in some capacity, I'm working as a coach already with Jude Gallagher, who's only 21 years of age, one of the brightest prospects in world boxing, not just Irish boxing. Commonwealth Games gold medalist. He's from Tyrone, comes down to me, stays a couple of nights a week in Drogheda, right, and we train hard, and he is an absolute joy to work with, and he is a candidate for the Paris Olympic Games, and he can go wherever he wants to go in the sport.
I know you were working with the Gaelic football team as well, so you're involved at that level, like kind of, or interested at least in working with people to improve performance.
Yeah, always. I love sport, you know, but I think there's a huge kind of correlation or connection between, like, the, you know, the mind and sport and the body, and obviously getting the best out of people is not always just training them to death, you know what I mean? It's sometimes just being able to connect with them and work with them and train smart. Like, that's what I had to do over the last couple of years. Not train hard, train smart, you know what I mean? And as a youngster growing up, I always thought it was train your heart, you know, train yourself to death. But you know, there's a smart way of doing things.
It's funny, Eric, like, I think I mentioned the El Hadri 10th round as a key moment in your career, like 2016 when you're turning pro. Like, for people who maybe don't follow boxing, they think, oh, amateur into pro, it's the same thing, same game. But like, realistically, the amateur game, punch, avoid the counter punch, rack up the points. Like, for you entering that professional ranks, you know, you have to have that killer instinct. It's a totally different ball game. Like, do you almost separate your career into two halves almost?
Yeah, first half, second half. Yeah, it is like that. Amateur, professional, and you're right. I was so long a professional that like it took me, like it was so hard, and I never really fully transformed or transferred into the professional kind of setting. But I did learn enough to win that last fight from Piqué, from the times that we had, you know. If you watch my defence in that fight, if you watch my hands, they're up here. I used to be an amateur southpaw, slick. Hands were always down around. Even watch the Barra fight, my hands are down, and maybe that's why I got caught with the big left hook. But if you watch me against El Hadri, my hands are here for 12 rounds. But Piqué had me training that way, you know. And after at the end of every training session, we would do this thing where we would be for 2 rounds of shadow boxing in the mirror. I would start with 1 kilo dumbbells in each hand for 30 seconds, then drop then 2 kilos, then 30 seconds stop, then 3 kilos in each hand, and then go again back to, so it's a 3-minute round. And I would do that for 2 rounds at the end of every hard training session, and I'm telling you, my hands were just falling off me. But then if you watch the fight, the 12-round fight, my hands were here. Even in the 12th round, they're here. And that's what you have to do.
That's Wayne McCullough, right? When Eddie Fudge talked about McCullough was going to make it because he had that kind of. I mean, obviously protected him all the way to his incredible career. Loads of really nice comments coming in. He worked hard for it, respect, says Mark C. JP Wright says, this guy's an inspiration to everybody. Eric, what about joining the Kildare backroom team? They could definitely do with it. Sean Mulhern says, Eric is such an inspiration. Every time he's in the show, it's brilliant. And Brian Slattery says, such a great speaker and an inspiration. Like, this is, you don't see the texts and messages that we get, but every time you're on, there is this outpouring of people just rallying behind you. I hope you feel that. Do you?
I do, yeah. I last night I listened to another kind of a tribute to me as well from irishboxing.com as well, and I was just kind of like a little bit kind of overwhelmed by that. I got a bit emotional, and my wife just be trying to tell me, you know, you have that impact, like, and I'm just like, I don't see that, you know what I mean? Because I think it was because of my own kind of imposter syndrome thing that I used to be dealing with most of my life, not feeling good enough or not feeling worthy or whatever. But I tell you, I am growing in that regard, and I do know today, and I can accept that I am having a good positive impact, you know, and I think that there in itself is a huge step, you know, in the right direction.
It is. You deserve it, though. Like, you know, again, the comeback is an incredible story. The book is going to be incredible. I hope there's a movie of it because you deserve it. And like, I'm genuinely really interested to see what comes next, because whoever gets you, whichever aspect of Irish sport gets you, they're going to be incredibly successful. And you know, I don't know. What do you want to do?
I don't even know what I want to do myself, but that's not, I suppose. That's not saying that I've nothing to do.
No,
you know
sure.
what I mean?
It's like, because you've got everything to do.
The amazing thing is that I'm very lucky that I can spend a bit of downtime now with my wife and my children, and my 2 older kids, Jack and Troy. They were up with us for the midterm and all. And just great, like, you know, it's a lovely, lovely time, lovely moment, and I do these talks, you know, here and there, but it's not like, you know, every day I'm having to run out and leave the house, so I can enjoy a little bit of downtime. But I will kind of, I suppose, because I do know we all need to have a structure in our life. We all need to be involved, and so we all need to be working. So I will look at where, you know, what, you know, I'm open to options and discussions, and we'll see where it goes, I suppose.
I saw a quote recently where I think it was since your latest baby was born, where Laura said, these are the best days of our lives. Yeah. And like, that struck me as something that, you know, you do have time now, you can relax and unwind and enjoy these best days of your life.
Yeah, and that's it. They are, like, you know, they're extraordinary times, and I think we should always really push the bar and, you know, step outside of our comfort zone. Like, we all know that. How many times do we all say, like, okay, life, you know, stepping outside your comfort zone, that's where it's at, you know? But we don't do it enough. You know, I think we're all really, we're all performing, obviously, but way below what our maximum, you know? So take that risk, you know, take that leap of faith and just push the boundaries. And, you know, that's where, I think that's where I think that's where you'll discover your true qualities.
Last one for now. I needed this today. Thank you, Eric, says Stephen in Dublin 3. I think everybody always needs a little bit of Eric Donovan in their lives. Congratulations, man. It's pleasure. It's a testimony to you and the hard work, and it's a great story. Thanks, man.
Ger, can I just say thanks to Off the Ball? You've been absolutely amazing. Championing me right from the very start. You know, you rally behind me, and everybody I meet, people I meet in the street, they always say to me, listen to you on Off the Ball, listen to you on Off the Ball, you're brilliant on Off the Ball. Like, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand, Eric Donovan Off the Ball. So did you say what was I doing next year? Was it? I want to joke. No, but seriously, honestly, I want to say that. Thanks very much.
Hey,
you've
you're
been
very
great.
welcome. You've been sensational the whole way along. We've got Paudie Maher talking about his book next.
Going by the Forbes valuation, is that Liverpool worth 4.5 billion. So John Henry and FSG are going to do quite well out of this one, it's fair to say.
But like, we always have to remember that this was bought to do this. It's not a secret that they're an investment group.
Yeah.
You know, they flip assets for a living. That's how they made their money. Maybe they're possibly a little bit more sentimental about their sports teams, and they still have the Red Sox all these years later.
Yeah.
But you know, it's in their nature, and this is the perfect time to do it. The Premier League's never going to be hotter. Liverpool have been an incredible brand over the last couple of years as well. Don't forget that. You know.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting questions is it that football is never going to be hotter and the market has peaked, or is that Liverpool will never be hotter? I just think akin to, I don't know, property, that football clubs in 20 years, 10 years just have to be worth it more. It's just been the direction of travel for so long.
There's a confluence of factors here, whereas I think Liverpool, in a necessity to be able to compete or to be still competing in 10 years' time, do need fresh investment, whether that is facilitated by a full-scale sale or whether it's taking on board people who have deeper pockets than John W. Henry and co. Because like, this is something that's obviously cropped up, and Jurgen Klopp's made, you know, point of it, that there's only 3 teams really in world football that can compete without limits, and they're all owned by petrostates. They are going to require investment on that scale if they're going to compete on a sustained level with Paris Saint-Germain, with Manchester City, with Newcastle, even if they happen to take that direction upwards.
Yeah, I do wonder that as well.
And it's now or never, you know.
Yeah, maybe, because they've boxed so clever and invested so well in transfers. They almost would be entitled to sit down and say, we actually couldn't have done a better job in this. Like, even the Coutinho sale and the way we spent that money on various players, we couldn't have done better, and we ended up still short last year of where we needed to be.
Yeah, because you can't make mistakes either.
They've
like,
no
you know
room
what I
for
mean?
error.
It's you know, you make it, if Núñez turns out to be a big mistake, that's going to cost them massively. If Jack Grealish turns out to be a massive mistake, Man City aren't in any way affected.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Koigig Pod on OTB Sports.
I'm laughing because I was listening to a conversation that the City girls were having, and they were just going on about this throw-in, and I was like, yeah, that's our weapon in the World Cup.
It's so great for the league that once again we're in this position.
I was watching PSG, I wasn't overly impressed with them either.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now. OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mows.
Right, we're talking hurling now. I'm delighted to say Paudie Maher is with us to talk about his new book. It's called All on the Line, a memoir of hurling and commitment. How are you?
Good, Ger, and yourself?
Good. We just had Eric Donovan in, and we were referring to him as a former professional boxer, and he was talking about his identity. That was a big thing for you in the book as well, that whole, I'm a hurler, and then all of a sudden one day you're not a hurler anymore. That's heartbreaking to read, and it's heartbreaking to kind of experience, like, now at this remove. Obviously, from your perspective, to revisit that for the book cannot have been an easy thing to do.
No, yeah, it was like a long therapy session, all right, but yeah, difficult to come to terms with. Like, you know, I wasn't expecting it. I hadn't planned it. You know, and then just to be all taken away from in the space of a couple of days between, you know, from whenever I got my first scan on my neck to when I met the specialist, you know. So yeah, it took me a while to come. Well, I'm still coming to terms with it, to be honest with you, and it's just finding that whole new routine. And as you said, you know, your identity. I'm known as a hurler around home, like in Tipperary, you know. So like that whole thing is taken away from you, and you know, you're just trying to find your own routine again. And what's to fill that void, you know, and it's hard to fill it, like, because it's a major part of your life.
Well, it's like everyday training, really. Like, you know, it's not just the pitch sessions, it's the eating, and it's the, like, what's everybody else doing, it's the WhatsApp groups, it's the analysis and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Like, and you know, it's the small things, like, as you said there, you know, I found myself for the first few weeks and months, you know, opening up the biscuits and things like that I used to never even look at, like, and even though you could enjoy him, you know, even a Claire at home would be saying, go on, enjoy him, like, but it doesn't feel right, you know. And
there's guilt associated with it.
And then I used to love training, and I fell out of love with the gym for a few weeks because I didn't feel like, what am I going to the gym to do, like, you know, I have no end goal.
Yeah.
You know, so for a few weeks I found that tough, but then obviously I found it better to exercise for my own mental health and well-being, you know. I found it brought me into a bit of routine as well, you know, so it took a bit of juggling to get used to my new life, as they say.
Was there any point over the last couple of years where you thought about retirement, where you thought that, you know, I need to start thinking about what life is like, or had you decided you were going to leave that, like, had you kicked that can down the road as far as you could?
Yeah, I never really thought about retirement, to be honest with you. You know, I was planning on going back for another year and possibly 2 seasons with Tipperary. I was feeling, you know, very, very fit.
There was no sense, I'll give it one last shot. It was like, screw that. I'm, you know, someone are going to have to, like, chisel me out of this team.
Yeah, no, I honest with you, I said, no, I'm planning on going back next year and we'll take it from there, like, you know, and see how we get on. And obviously the long term would have been to give the club a good 3 or 4 or 5 years when I'm able to give them a decent 3 or 4 or 5 years, you know. And so yeah, like, whatever would have been taken away from the Tipperary scene, you know, taken out of the club scene as well, was that kind of, you know, hit very hard as well, you know, because many lads get to go back and give 2 or 3 years with their club after they finish with intercounty.
Yeah.
And that was just taken away as well, so I found that very hard to deal with as well.
We had Paddy Stapleton on the show last week, where he's writing the kids' books, and he was talking about the first time he picked up the hurl as a moment he distinctly remembers. Like, is that something that you remember quite evidently in your head, that it was that you're nearly in Tipperary, I guess, born with a hurl in your hand?
You are, yeah. Like, it's nearly given to you for the first, when you're about 5 or 6 years of age. I remember my mother, you know, dropped me up to the juvenile club on a Saturday morning, and, you know, for the first few, I suppose, months and maybe years, you're kind of like, it's, you know, you don't really want to go up. You probably rather be watching a cartoon on television or something, but you know, eventually you get caught into it, and from then on, like from 11 or 12 years of age, it just consumes you. Like, we're very lucky with the schools in Thurles, you know, it's all hurling, you know, our juvenile club, Thurles Hogue, all hurling, and then it just brings you on into the senior club in Thurles. So yeah, no, we've no real other choice in Thurles, really. Only, you know, if you don't play the hurling, you know, you're kind of made, you know, you're made play it, you know, that kind of way. So yeah, no, we've got a great education, to be fair, up through the years.
There was a great story from the book, plenty of great stories in the book, but you were talking about the 2009 All-Ireland final against Kilkenny, and you said in the book, I was at full back, Richie Power was named at full forward for Kilkenny, but Henry Shefflin jogged in at the start. Shit. Looking back, it was a good move by Brian Cody. He probably said to Henry, this lad did well in the league final, but he's the youngest on the tip team, the most inexperienced, to go in there and rattle him. Like, absolute, like, thrown in at the deep end as a young hurler. Like, that's 2009. I don't know what age you were then, but you were young, one of the younger members in the tip panel. Like, that must have been quite an experience when you're watching Henry Shefflin run towards you at the start of an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, you know, like, I would have watched him for the previous 10 years, you know, and been in awe of him, like, you know, and being in awe of a lot of the Kilkenny lads, and you know, to see it, you know, I kind of had an inkling that it could happen, because I think Brian Cody was starting to move around Henry Shefflin maybe in the big days on the more inexperienced players, you know, to try and rattle him maybe in that, and so I had a feeling it could happen, but then between you do your warm-up and then you have the parade and the stadium is heaving and bouncing, you know, next thing you turn to your position and you look up and here he's dragging in, but he's probably wearing number 10 or 12. You're like, oh God, you know, like, but yeah, no, it was, you know, I was scared to start that game as well. I got out in front for the ball, it was only about a minute or two gone, and I ran over the ball, and it was only him 1-on-1 and with Brendan Cummins, and he pulled in it, and Brendan Cummins, in fairness to him, got a slight touch and knocked it out. I said, if that went in, like, God knows what way the day would have went for me personally, but yeah, no, settled in after that, like, and but yeah, no, I was lucky enough to come up against some of the good lads, alright, to be fair.
Decent, yeah.
Were you always a fullback up to that point, or was that a bit of a surprise for you to make the team at fullback at senior? I
probably would have played the year or two previous in my club fullback.
Right.
but necessarily I wasn't really a full back. You know, Liam Sheedy actually made me full back in the minor team in 06, but I was always a centre back, a midfielder, coming up through the years. I even give a small bit of time with the forwards, but didn't last too long up there now. But yeah, no, for them first few years, I was kind of playing full back for my club and for Tipperary, and then actually simultaneously I was moved out with my club and moved out with Tipperary as well.
So after 09, in 2010 when you stopped the 5 in a row, you're obviously in the half-back line at that stage. When does that happen? When does that...
Sure, it kind of happened. It kind of was made happen. We played Cork in the first round 2010, and I marked Isakio Halpine below, and he kind of destroyed us the same day.
He did okay.
Yeah, and I was moved out to the wing that match, and from then on it was kind of moved to the wing. I was left at the wing, like.
And that seemed like your natural position in a way.
Yeah, would you believe never played wing back up to that?
Right.
Never ever played wing back. It was always full back, centre back, midfield. I was never wing back until Liam Sheedy played me number 7, and just to be honest with you, probably my best position down through the years. You know, the one I most felt naturally at.
Yeah, isn't that mad? That like you know you need to have the traumatic experience of Isaki.
Yeah, you know, and as guess like I got another experience. I was put back in full back in 14, and. No, I was playing perfectly fine there, but we played Galway in 2014 the qualifier, and Johnny Glynn scored 2 goals off me. Now it wasn't all bad that day, but I was moved out after that as well, and again it was just, you know, I was moved back in another time as well. So it is, you know, you'd be moved after 1 or 2 performances, but then you're put back in again. So
well, I don't think anybody's going to stop Isaki that day. That was like all-time great performance.
Yeah, no, it was tough going because he had given us a bit of a handful in the league game as well that year. So. You know, he was just so big. He was probably one of the hardest men I've ever marked. Definitely.
You talked about the number 6 role in the book as well, and how that's changed, and even your kind of reference Declan Hannon and more recent centre half backs. But that was one of the things that stood out. You said like to have someone like Brendan Cummins behind you and him shouting at you, you know, watch left or whatever, and the fact that you can hear him in a crowd of 50, 60, 70,000 people. Like it has changed his position dramatically, but to have a goalkeeper or someone who's so vocal behind you must make it all the bit easier. Yeah,
you know, I was lucky enough when I was starting out like that. My first few years, 9, 10, 11, we had great big personalities and lads with major experience. Brendan Cummins had been in goal for Tipperary since the mid-90s. Like, you know, Paul Curran was there, Declan Fannin was there in 2009, Conor Mahon, you know, so there was major experience around there. Like, so we were so lucky coming in that these lads had been through it all, and they'd been through the tough times as well. So yeah, I know it was a big help to us, and as I said to you, big personalities made the presence well known on the pitch, like, you know, and even in the dressing room as well. So yeah, we got a good understanding of what was needed and required.
Like those tough times, Caroline Curran is someone we've spoken about plenty on the show from a sports psychology perspective, and you touch on it in the book as well, the fact that after that 09 All-Ireland final loss, you're obviously all gutted, and I think he's all sat around in a circle and shared how you all felt. I suppose this was probably before the 2010 season started, but you shared what the 2009 final defeat meant to you personally, and there were a few tears in the room.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, like when you actually get a group of grown men into a room and they get them to talk about their emotions, like, you know, and for the first 1 or 2 you're like, oh, what's going on here? But then as it goes around, everyone's actually feeling the same, and it's amazing, like, you know, when everyone actually just talks like that truthfully and honestly, like what it means to people, like, then you kind of realise this actually means a lot to the group, like, you know. And that's what Karen did. She literally just 1 or 2 sentences and let the whole thing open up, like, and that's what she's very good at, like, you know. And yeah, lads just talked about what it felt and what it meant to him to lose, and I suppose what it meant to him to win, possibly win one as well. So yeah, that was kind of it really opened up to us all that, geez, this means a lot to lads, you know, and lads with kids, lads that are married, young lads that are only 19, 20 like we were, you know. So you know, it all kind of bonded us together and made us feel, you know, that much more of a group and more stronger, and we needed that over certain games that year as well.
How important for you was it to, because you're still under 21 in 2010 when you stopped the 5 in a row, that's right, you go on and win the
we won 21 the following Sunday, or Saturday, sorry. Yeah.
It's not a bad week. But you had that experience of being in the team the previous year as a 20-year-old or maybe even a 19-year-old at that stage. How important was it for you that the second time you were in an All-Ireland final was actually the second time, and you'd been through that experience of seeing Henry shuffling in? Like, what was the benefit of that experience?
Always stood to us, like, I can only speak for myself, I suppose, but it's definitely stood to me, like, you know, everything wasn't new. Like, the first year it was just, you're getting measured up for suits, you're doing just all them small things, tickets, you know, everything was a big ordeal. Like whether it's the following year, it was just nice and calm. You know, everything wasn't new. We knew what to expect. Like I even remember Liam Sheedy going down to the finest detail of, we were training at Simba Stadium one evening and he lined us all up as if we were meeting the president. And you know, someone came down and met us all.
Yeah.
I think it was the kitman Hotpoint. And you know, even everything was just covered down to tea, like, you know, and we didn't probably have a big massive amount of people coming in looking at us at training.
Yeah.
You have an official open night just before the week of the game, but other than that was you'd your couple of usual local lads just looking in over the gate, like. But like we would have obviously heard what went on below Uncle Kenny with the thousands.
Yeah.
But I think we were driven just to take the opportunity, knowing that we missed it the year before, and look, yeah, we needed every bit of it, like, you know, to get over them that year, you know. And
when it does happen and the final whistle goes in 2010 and you're an All-Ireland champion at senior level, like Joe Brody has spoken before about 93 and winning with Derry and being in the shower afterwards in the Cat in the Cage pub in Drumcondra and almost feel like it was an anticlimax in some ways. Now, plenty of other of his Derry teammates felt otherwise, but for you, what was that overriding first emotion when you realised that you'd achieved Liam McCarthy?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I remember you're just running around like a lunatic, like, basically you just can't believe it. And then we received the cup and you're going around meeting supporters afterwards. Like, I remember one of the first supporters I met, and actually I wouldn't have really known him at the time, was Nick English, was a couple of rows back, and he just jumped out, you know, give you a big hug, and you're saying, geez, that's Nick English, like, you know. And this is what it means to them. And everything is just, you're in party mode, like, you know, that night, the following day, the homecoming, everything was just a buzz. And then we had to knuckle back down to Tuesday night and go back training because we were playing the All-Ireland under 21 on the Saturday, and we were lucky that was played in Thurles as well. You know, so like I remember the lead up into that match, like, and I'm from Thurles, so I'm living in town, and you know, the buzz around the place was just unreal. And you knew the senior boys were going their travel to the county and they were enjoying themselves, and we were getting all the pictures. But you know, we had the opportunity to really make a party of it on the Saturday, and everything just went down, you know, to a T, like. And it was like that week was just amazing. Like, it's just really, like, and no matter where you went or who you met, it was just everyone was in great form and buzzing, like, you know. So it's one week I'll never forget anyway. And the following week, alright, maybe comes an anticlimax, you're put back into club training and it's lashing rain, and you know, but no, it was an amazing week, like, and it was one I'll never forget.
In a way, right, like we as fans of hurling become aware of you more that year than even the previous year, because you're just breaking into the team. But this year, like, that team stops the 5 in a row, and so therefore instantaneous, everybody is on the team is famous. And then the next week you back it up in an under 21 game that I think far more people watched, because there were five seniors on the team, right?
Yeah. And
like, I think the last time that we had heard this happen was 98 in the Galway footballers. I hate to bring it up, it kills me, but anyway, so immediately there's kind of extra weight and celebrity that comes with that. And our identity of you, kind of going back to the start of the conversation, is that you're a hurler and you're like a very important member of this team, and I can see how, like, that just becomes who you are. I'm now a hurler and we win All Ireland, so like that must have been interesting and a bit of a challenge, and also very enjoyable, like a kind of whole mix of things.
Yeah, you know, I suppose life did change a bit after that 2010 season, because I suppose even nationally we came out of, you know, we came into the limelight, I suppose, and there was a lot more eyes on us, and you know, you could hear the talk of, oh, well, how many are you going to win? You know, this kind of thing, and you're like, Jesus, and the effort that's gone into that. But you know, definitely we're in the more limelight. You know, if things go well, you get all the praise, but likewise, if things were going against you or there was a loss, you know, or we lost the All-Ireland the following year, the criticism was a bit more, you know, straight at you as well, like, you know, so we had to deal with both sides of it. But yeah, like as we spoke about at the start, the identity definitely came out that year. You know, 2009 was fine, people kind of just went, oh, you're just, so there was not very much about it. But from 2010, the winter 2010 onwards, you know, walking down the street, you were known as the hurler, really, like, you know. And
yeah.
The eyes were more or less on you. If it was Christmas time and you're going out for a pint, and you're being watched, and
yeah,
you know, people are like, oh, is he having a, yeah, well, it's December, like,
yeah,
leave me alone, like, you know. So
are you tempted to run away from that at all, or do you have to just embrace it? Like, is it natural?
I suppose it's annoying, and when I was younger, probably I found it annoying. You know, all the eyes were on you. But as I got older and more experienced, you know, I think I kind of dealt with it, and just kind of, you know, it was what it was. It was all part of who we are, and you know, I'm just as normal as the next person. Like,
you're kind of at the start of that generation of people who are like, can I get a photograph? 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 Well, like, because I think just starting camera phones around the time, does that become normal? Is that okay as time goes on? Do you just get good at that and understand that that's what it's going to be like tonight, where and there's going to be some melts around?
Yeah, you know, I suppose earlier on, the first year, I think even referenced the book that, you know, people look for photos after All Ireland when we're beating you, and I'm like, why are you looking for a photo of me for? Like, I'm only here a year, like. But as time went on, you do find it, and the camera phones then, you know, were more, you know, you find you could be inside in a bar, or you could be anywhere, and some lad or a child or someone could come up and go, can we get it, and just pull the phone out in front of you and start taking pictures, and you're looking, you know, like, so. But you do get used to it, like, I suppose, and as I said, that's the way it is now, you know, everyday life, you know, no matter who you are. So, but yeah, no, it's again, at the start I probably found it annoying, but again, you grow to get used to it.
That being thrust into the limelight as well, I guess pundits take notice of the team and the new players coming through. There was a great paragraph you had in one of the chapters as well. You said, I can remember Ger Shane saying back around 2009 that the Tipperary defence was very slow, that if you turned us we'd be in trouble, which was a narrative I'd heard a few times over the years, that if a team got us running back towards our own goal, we were essentially screwed. Like, was that something that punditry and lazy narratives became a thing around 2009, 2010, that you were like, okay, teams are after us now because we're starting to win games?
Yeah, look, I just felt it was a bit, as you said, they're a bit lazy, like to throw that as like, people would have said that throughout all my whole career, and like, it would have said it about various players if I was on the Tipperary team, like, but, you know, I don't ever think we were ever slow or anything like that. And as I said in the book, like, if you run at any defence, if it's hurling, if it's football, and you break through, like, every defender is going to look slow, like turning and chasing back, like, you know. So I just felt that didn't really hold up, really, to be honest with you. And I don't think anything like that ever caught us out over the years, like, you know. So but yeah, again, that's all part and parcel of, you know, as you're getting a bit more successful and winning a few more games, that the limelight is going to be on you a bit more, as we spoke about, whether it's supporters, you know, at home or whatever, or even if it's pundits or, you know, the Sunday game, different things like that, like, you know. So again, it's all part and parcel. It probably would have been something again that would have frustrated me to start, but as I got older and got more experience, it was something just went over my head.
It's easy to enjoy those All Irelands at the time, like, but like Gavin White was in with us on a Saturday there recently, and he, the morning after, picking up his first All-Star with Kerry. Like, you have 6 of them. Like, is it at the point where now that you're retired, you can kind of look back and say, Jesus,
that's not bad.
The individual honours are fairly nice to look back on now, because at the time you can't really talk too much about the individual honours, it's all about the team. But now you can kind of look back and say, Jesus, I was fairly good.
Yeah, I suppose again I didn't really reflect on anything in my career until actually writing the book, doing the book with Michael Moynihan, and you're kind of, obviously he's making you delve into everything that went on, whether it was the good games, the bad games, you know, the wins, the losses, whatever it was. And yeah, look, it is nice to look back and like, I know GA players, especially, obviously they're all going to be still playing and involved, they're going to say, look, it's still about the team, usual stuff, but there's no doubt about it, it's nice winning an individual award such as prestigious as an All-Star. And I suppose now I can look back and say, yeah, look, it's proud to have them, and my mother is my home, probably looking after him, you know, and Rowan is lucky enough to have a couple there as well. So
I was going to say, how many does he have?
Yeah, I think he's 2, I think.
All right, so he's got a while to go.
Catch up yet, yeah, but hopefully he does. That means we're going well at home. So, but yeah, no, they are nice to have, to be honest with you. And it probably, now for me, I can look back and say, yeah, it just shows that I put in a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of hard, you know, effort and I suppose sacrifice. And yeah, look, it is nice to look back and have them couple of awards, and pity there wasn't another All-Ireland or 2 with it now. It would have been nice.
You'd have been marking on Kelly sometimes in training. You might be marking him on the sideline this year. He's in with Davy. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, you know, he's down with Davy in Waterford, you know, so it'll be interesting times this year. Right?
Nice low profile Munster Championship this season.
Jesus, but yeah, no, I think there's probably connection there from LIT over the years. I think the 2 of them were involved together in the Skipping Cup. But yeah, I know it'll be interesting we'd home with us in our home club at Thurles there a few years ago. He gave a handout. So I know he's going to bring a lot of expertise down to Davy now as well. So but yeah, I know it'll be interesting times ahead next summer.
Yeah, and Limerick obviously going up for their own little bit of history. It's nice to have many teams desperate to stop them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, who's going to stop them? Like, and if they can be stopped at all. But look, at fantastic team, and they're going through the time now probably that Kilkenny went through during the 2000s. You know, just that kind of unbeatable feeling, like, you know, and no one's going to stop us. And they're hungry for more. Like, you know, they don't sound like the personalities that are going to be happy with what they have. Like, and you know, it's going to take an awful effort from someone. It's going to take an unbelievable performance on one given day, and to knock Limerick off their perch. And
is the Patrick Swell game, is there any context that's important in terms of what happens next year? Does it matter at all? Is it just a completely separate competition, totally irrelevant?
Which game is that? I'm sorry.
The Munster Club. Does that matter?
Oh,
sorry.
Na Piarsaigh.
Sorry. Does that matter in terms of an All Ireland? Is there anything that like Ballygunner can do, any template that they can put up against those lads, or is it actually better for the rest of the country if they go on and win a Club All Ireland and over celebrate a bit?
I don't think they're them kind of lads now, to be honest. No, I wouldn't think there's any bearing. Like, I think Ballygunner have their own way of playing, and they're so, you can see down through. I think Ballygunner have a running through every club team they have. They all play in the same way, so they're not going to change their identity for, I don't think, the Piarsaigh, the way the Piarsaigh are going to play. So that's why I think that game is going to be so intriguing. Who wins out in that? You know, I'm working down around in the Piarsaigh lads in Cardiff down there. So
spying.
Yeah, I think they're really going to push for. They're going for big time this year, I think. You know, so that's going to be a cracking game. You know, I might try and get into it if I can, and. But yeah, we're really looking forward to that. That'd be a cracker. Like, and it would be interesting if Ballygunner's style of play can, you know, upset the Piarsaigh lads, and see, you know, as you said there, it could be something for us all to look at maybe in a couple of months' time.
Any little bit of evidence helps. Well, listen, we wish you the very best for it. And was the therapeutic in the end? Do you feel better for having written it, or is it like, oh, jeez?
Yeah, your parents' picture is something I never thought of doing, and probably was never going to. You know, if you asked me a few years ago, I was like, no, I'm not, no way. And then when it was put to me, I was like, yeah, do you know what? And Michael was brilliant with me as well, like, you know, and you know, we had some great chats, and yeah, to be honest with you, when I finished it in, he said, that's it, we're done now, and you sign off, and you said you're happy with everything, and you said, you know what, I actually enjoyed that, and you know, it made me reflect on games, and you know, obviously games that didn't go so well, like the couple of Irons we talked about, or you know, the games that did go well, like 2010 that week, and you know, 2019, 16, whatever it was, and you know, I just said, you know, that was actually nice, and you kind of you know, breathe out and go, that's it, like, and you can try and move on if you can, like, you know. So no, I really enjoyed it.
I remember we had a live hurling show for Off the Ball in Croker, the Limerick Cork All Ireland semi-final in 2018. I remember sitting beside yourself, between yourself and Dan Shanahan, which was just the most remarkable insight for a game of that magnitude. But like, you were sitting there and talking about the game as a player. Like, will you now watch hurling in a completely different way as someone involved in either punditry or coaching? Like, can you almost relax now when you're not involved in the game directly as a player? Can you now just kind of almost see it differently?
Yeah, look, I suppose the Tipperary games last year, I was watching them, my brother was involved in, and obviously I'm after leaving, so I was still kind of doing everything I could to try and nudge him over the line. But all the other games then I really enjoyed. I never went to so many hurling games in my life, and even to games that at junior intermediate level at home, the club that I would never went to. But yeah, you are kind of going looking at what way are they setting up, and what way are they doing to counteract them, and different things like that. So you're probably looking at it in a different way, more than just turning on a game and just watching to see what happens, like, you know. So yeah, no, the mindset probably has changed a small bit, you know. And then, you know, I'm getting involved now in the backroom team with Tipperary and stuff, so you are watching how other teams or what other way players are playing, or is there anything you can pick up maybe. You know, it's even gone so mad that you watch a football game, so you can pick up something off the football game that you might be able to bring into the hurling side of things. So yeah, I know the mind has been overdrive a bit, but at least it's a different way more than when you were a player.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it. The book is available in all bookshops now, but if you want to get a signed copy, you can head along to Easton's in Clonmel at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and then in Thurles in Easton's at 12 o'clock. It's called All on the Line, a memoir of hurling and commitment. Paudie, thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, lads, I appreciate that.
If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. This is OTB AM live every morning in association with Gillette. Brought to you by Movember, Effortless Shave, Magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. We're back tomorrow with Keith Wood. Luke Loughlin, the Westmeath footballer, tells us his remarkable story. Right now, here's some Monday Night Rugby where Joe was joined in studio by Andy Dunn and Jerry Thornley. Enjoy.
That was you. That was you. Hello, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe. Pleasure.
And Andy Dunn here in studio as well. Hello.
How are you, Joe?
We have a hell of a weekend to talk about. I mean, largely we're going to focus on Ireland, South Africa. Worth mentioning, there were some great games over the weekend. France 30, Australia 29 caught the eye. Australia coming to Dublin, obviously, in 2 weeks' time. England beaten by the same scoreline against Argentina. Michael Cheika having the most amazing week, really, any coach has ever had between the Lebanon and Argentina. New Zealand put 55 on Wales and Cardiff, which does catch the eye. And then Ireland's next opponents, Fiji, beaten by Scotland 28 points to 12. But of course, Ireland 19, South Africa 16 is our first port of call. Just as an occasion, Andy, Johnny Sexton talked about it afterwards. He said, well, that was a test match. And by that he meant attritional, intense. I mean, the injury toll even in the first half caught the eye. It was one of those matches where players go deep, I think.
Yeah, and the crowd went deep, and there was a furore at times around turnovers or penalties, and you could see that, you know, at one stage I think Porter coming off the back of a penalty, fist pumping to the crowd. So, you know, there was that level of buy-in, emotional buy-in from both teams, supporters. Always adds, I suppose, to that overall intensity of that test match experience Sexton is talking about, and nice to see it in November at a time when sometimes other sports fans question the validity of it. Is it a competition? Is it not? I mean, it's without doubt a competition and a competitive fixture, yeah.
Well, look at Tyke Burns' face as he walked off. It was like he'd gone 15 rounds. Even at 6-6, that first half, it was absorbing.
Yeah, I met a few people afterwards that said, oh, that first half was boring. For me, it was anything but. I mean, I suppose for those who want their tries and, you know, lots of running rugby, they'll get that next Saturday, ironically, 1 p.m. against Fiji. But I thought that first half was riveting because it was like a game of roulette in the way that Ireland were trying to take on the South African blitz defence and took a few hits in doing so and failing on about 3 occasions when they did work engineer space on the outside through inaccuracy of the passer or the receiver. And if you'd said beforehand that the box was going to have 5 penalties to the inside the Leinster, or inside the Irish 22, and go for them all 5 would be held up, or the fifth one effectively stolen, and Ireland would have 1 attempt at it in the second half and they would score from it, nobody would have believed you. That was, I think, it wasn't the most beautiful rugby, but when this box throw their A game at you and you withstand it, it must have given them great confidence. Even then, at half time, as you're right, you would have said, having lost Stuart McCluskey, Conor Murray, and then Tyke Furlong at the interval, with Finlay Bealham to come on for the second half to face up to Stephen Kitchoff and Ox Neche. I don't know why they tried to scrum so illegally, why they just scrum straight. They didn't. They were like they're going around a bend. And so that was great that they came through it in that way as well, but digging deep into the reserves. Jimmy O'Brien, I think, hasn't played at outside centre for Leinster since something like March last year. It was against Zebra Parma. Like, for him to slot in, Gary Ringrose, who was magnificent again, as usual, just in his own understated way. And for them to then be rewarded for their brand of rugby and keep going for it. So it was a very brave performance in many ways. And I think what I really loved about it, Joe, is that I remember both head coaches last week being asked, will you be keeping your powder dry for the World Cup in 11 months' time or less than a year's time? And neither team kept their powder dry. They both went out of both barrels and played their games, and Ireland came out on top.
Even that first 15 minutes, Jay referenced there, where South Africa are just hammering away inside the Irish 22. I think Ireland made about 50 tackles in the first 15 minutes. Now, one of those things was unsustainable. South Africa were going to run out of steam, or Ireland were going to run out of steam. And Ireland found their way a little bit into the game. And as Jerry mentioned, and curious for your thoughts on that game within the game, which was that South African blitz defence shooting up and Ireland desperately trying to, under crazy pressure, get out to the fringes. Even on the Virgin commentary, CJ Stander was saying this is going to work eventually. What Ireland are doing here is going to work. But man, that South African defence is quite something.
Yeah, it's fearsome in the speed with which they're just in your face. But I think, you know, I thought McCluskey he's a brilliant option because he's obviously going to attract them physically. But if we could get the ball in his hands more, or if Henshaw's playing there, the second receiver is the key person in attack against the blitz defence. It's not Sexton or whoever plays at 10, because they trade off the idea 10 is going to throw a wide ball and that's airtime. And as long as there's airtime on the ball, they're coming up and they're probably making a gamble. It's going to be into that third channel. If you just put an element of doubt in their mind, you make a short bullet pass to 12. That guy then becomes a dog leg in their defence, and he's very vulnerable, and you can then go over him. And we could see that happening a couple of times, but it was Sexton inevitably was throwing that wider ball over the top. I think if the guy one out from Sexton is throwing that ball over the top, the pass lands more often. You get more space, more, I suppose, connection, in terms of the distance of the pass. So a few of them just landed about an inch too short, or Sexton was under too much pressure. But the idea was exactly right, is to try and float it over that rush defender. But I just think one out, doing that attack more from the McCluskey channel, for example, or the Henshaw channel, is the ideal way to then beat that defence. But I mean, you mentioned that first 15-20 minutes. We spent so long really defending as opposed to attacking really in that period. But one of the things to look at, obviously the defensive maul I thought was outstanding, really, really outstanding. But we just had an easy cough up from a restart. And against a team like South Africa, if you cough up a restart and give them possession in your own half, again, you're making 30 to 40 needless tackles, and you're getting it's pretty punishing, So I would imagine they'll sit back and look at that and say, lads, just get that restart right. We've 30 less tackles to make. So
10 incredible minutes after half time, 2 tries.
Yeah. Okay, they got a little bit lucky with the Johnny Sexton inside pass to Mac Hansen. That was forward, and the South Africans complained in the media about that bitterly, but we'll never mention Judson Colby's yellow card that could easily have been red. But after that, the sequence of play with Johnny Sexton down from the hit he then takes from Jesse Creel, Mac Hansen goes into first receiver, Gary Ringrose goes twice into first receiver. They just kept, and that's when they're at their best then, and there was a lovely little disguise pass from Gibson Park to Hansen to go through the hole. And Ringrose is just playing outstanding rugby. He started at 13, moved to 12, and then he's effectively playing 10. He makes the final carry with his footwork that gets them over the gain line, that gets Springboks offside. And probably the pivotal moment of the match. It's 6-all, it's an arm wrestle, and Johnny Sexton says we're going to the corner.
Oh, it's a take your points game on the face of it.
And what a brilliant decision it was. And do you know what it did as well, Joe? It really got the crowd into the game in a major way. There was a huge roar of approval at this call, right? Let's go for it. And then they execute the try. Fair play to Josh van der Fleer. You see Simon Easterby giving Paul O'Connell a pat in the back. I wonder, did they mean to go blind as much as South Africa were trying to drag them over touch and goal? And then the second try is just what this team is all about. Heads up rugby. Like Hugo Keenan, great take, first game back, solid as a rock. They go up the box kick, there's a loose ball from a ruck. Caelan Doris, to keep that ball in play, was as skillful a moment as there was in the match. To know that Josh van der Fleer was there. Again, Balakoon and Ringrose hit the ruck. And then you've got, it was James Ryan a lock at Swarm half. You've got the 2 props next receiving the ball, moving on to Jemison Gibson Park. And Gibson, but this is how you beat a blitz defence as well. If you show go and they shoot up. Richie Mwanga does it brilliantly against him. He actually does it better than Bowden Barrett. But that's what Gibson Park did. That is the moment. That's the moment of skill, probably off the match. And then just really clever, excellent execution. Another lock involved, Tyg Byrne. And then it was Hugo Keenan, then to Jimmy O'Brien, perfect pass for Mac Hansen finish. Like, it was just a class try. And it felt, the only nagging thing about it was, because Johnny didn't land either of the touchline conversions, that what it could have been a 20 points to 6 lead was only 16-6, and there was still plenty of time left in the clock. But that effectively was where they won the match.
Yeah.
There was work to do. Even after the line break from Gibson Park, there's something I love watching Hugo Keenan, the free running style. He doesn't run like he's playing in an international rugby match. Most people run hunched or braced for impact. He kind of runs like an 800-metre athlete who's out on a track with no fear of being hit, and there's an amazing freedom to watching how he runs. Just an observation on that. But he obviously came into the line and gave it to O'Brien. But O'Brien did it. If you see that overhead angle, O'Brien straightens it up because there's a lot of cover defence coming across, and it's a very subtle skill and can be glossed over. But he really checked that cover defence coming across. Perfectly, and it's a skill that gets overlooked. I just
he made it look easy when it was easy.
He did. I mean, there's a lot of rush defence coming. There's a lot of pressure on your inside. The tendency is you're naturally going to drift with that, but to check that, go against it, face that kind of onslaught coming across and then time the pass. It was really nice, little understated skill.
So the reason that sounds so encouraging is we have these players playing off script, reacting to situations with great intelligence.
Well, I got mixed up. Obviously, I didn't realise it was a Caelan Doris who went and picked it up and passed it back inside. I thought that was
getting tackled into touch.
I did my roles mixed up. I thought it was James Ryan, but
Ryan comes in as well.
Yes, yeah, but I mean, again, as Jerry alluded to, different ways to beat their rush defence. Gibson Park just held possession and delayed, as he referenced Mo'unga does so well. Rush defences like that can be broken when you have this. It's a very, very fine line between hesitancy and delaying it, and then delaying it too much. You delay it too much, you're in massive trouble. If you delay it enough, they'll often make the decision for you, and there'll be a gap either side of the runner that shoots. So it just takes an incredible amount of composure on the ball, and certainly Gibson Park has that.
Just the two defenders completely out of the game.
Yeah, he just allows them make that decision, but again, takes huge confidence and composure.
And then there was probably a degree of the hanging on part a little bit towards the end, where again it was about resolve. And what was very interesting, Jerry, is that Johnny Sexton said afterwards, it was we were reviewing the Sunday papers yesterday, it was on the front page of the Sunday Independent, he was making the observation that maybe under that kind of pressure and that physicality, previous Irish teams, he didn't pinpoint what years he's talking about, but he said they might have folded under that kind of pressure. So he was almost talking about a kind of psychological resolve maybe that hasn't been there previously. That jumped off the page to me. Again, he didn't name names or name teams, but it was pretty. There were a few teammates going, "Oh, interesting."
It was he's very honest in his immediate post-match assessments, isn't he? Sometimes maybe too honest for his own good. He always is. Like, remember after the Champions Cup final, should I have gone for more 3-pointers? Nobody'd asked him, but he just thinking out loud.
He set the narrative in chain. So
I think that's a valid point.
Does it jump out to you though?
Yeah, definitely. And I tell you what else, Joe. I mean, I hate viewing all these November tests and all the Six Nations games now purely in the prism of a World Cup. But had the Springboks won that game, even by then coming back and winning and taking from Ireland, the narrative would have been, just like England away when at full strength, or France and Paris, Ireland, and now the Boks, and a bit like La Rochelle and Saracens against Leinster, Ireland can't take the big physical bullying from these teams. So that kind of dispels that narrative. And what's more, I think that narrative could have seeped into the players' minds if they had lost. By winning that, I don't think it gives them a great psychological edge when Ireland plays South Africa in Stade de France, but I think it denies South Africa one.
The edge. Because where are you on the size question now? Because a part of me absolutely, totally agrees with Jerry's point there. It would have been very damaging to lose his African size. But at the same time, home advantage when you're going up against that size feels significant as opposed to neutral venue. They have a number 10 who really just proved beyond all doubt as great as his feet are. He can't kick. And, they were, I know Sexton missed some kicks, but they were costly kicks for South Africa to miss. We've maybe parked the size worry as opposed to completely put it to bed.
The size, I personally, one of my biggest worries was parked back in Paris, back in was it February or March. We didn't get blown away in the set piece or in the maul in France. We got, I suppose we lost physical battles because they made line breaks there. And my sense of watching that Ireland-France game back in February was the likes of Damien Penaud and the left winger. His name escapes me.
Do we not have the likes of Antonio and these guys running over Ireland and then they went wide?
No, it was the other way around.
Really?
Honestly, the first 15 minutes of that game, we had a chat about it on here.
I remember, and you convinced me at the time.
I convinced you at the time, and now you've gone back to the original narrative. Well, I'm wholly convinced that France made line breaks out wide against us in that game, and then when they're behind us, they gave it to the likes of Antonio, who's running onto the ball from 20 metres against a broken defence. That's not losing a physical battle against a 150 kilogram man. You're not going to win that no matter who you are. What happened against France was we held our own in the scrum and we had a very good defensive maul, and that slightly got glossed over because we lost. Against South Africa, we had a very good scrum again. By and large, there had been a few worries there, and we certainly creaked in the second half. I think Porter got away with one as well on a penalty decision that was the same sequence with Sexton's forward pass. So we had a bit of luck, but our line-out defence was strong. Our defence overall was strong. Our scrum held true. So I wouldn't I think we did really well in terms of matching that physical South African dominance. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of we can park it with hope going forward. I think there's other issues that I'd be concerned about. Is that South African side, every bit of them is built for a kicking dominant 10. That's what that team needs. And this guy, Willemse, was... he's a footwork player, he's a baller, but he ain't the guy they need in the way they play. And even Willie LaRue coming in, the
difference he made.
Yeah, and he's a part-timer in that position, but he made a massive difference to how they play. But
So in that respect, and I think, did they throw everything at each other? Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But with the view to the World Cup, there was also a degree of, well, let's see how Willemse goes at 10, and they've learned that now. So they are still refining and fine-tuning.
Yeah, I think physical parity, when that happens, if you've got a good, reliable kicking 10, that kind of add a whole different aspect. And I think that's what they've had when they've been successful with Mornay staying, with Andre Pollard.
So do you think if Pollard's in that team at 10, they win the game?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And that's crucial.
I wouldn't necessarily agree.
Okay.
I would think that if they had Pollard and Lukhanyo-Am at outside centre, then it's a different game, because Lukhanyo-Am is really their creative force. He's their most creative back player before you get to the speedsters on the edges. Jesse Keel, great defender, and defended superbly, and defends that outside channel, leads that blitz defence as well as anybody. But he doesn't have the range of skills of a Lukhanyo-Am, as a very underrated player, even though he's won a World Cup winner.
Yeah. So expand though on why with Pollard they win.
Well, they kicked their points.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and I'd imagine they play a bit more territory, and just a bit more, I suppose, contained. They've slightly fallen between two stools there, with a monstrous pack who can take on a team physically, but then they don't play a kick and territory game with a kind of dancing, fleet-footed 10 who's not controlling anything. So I would imagine it's a classic case of the forward pack getting up after a fair bit of work and seeing that they're not 30 yards further down the field and not too happy about it.
Yeah.
They have a very definitive style that is successful, and they make no apologies about it, and I don't think they should go away from it going into the World Cup, but they definitely need